Okay, public comments. Is anybody got any cards they would like to submit? Got none? Okay, item 8.1, AATA representative? Nothing? You-
Comment tonight.
Nothing tonight, okay, thank you very much, Mr. So. CSEA representative?
Thank you.
Nothing, fine. Miss Norbert. Student rep, our student rep is probably grad night at Universal.
Can I go?
I would much rather be a grad night. Okay, item 8.4, recognition of Dr. Brent Woodard. Is there a script? Should I say some words? I know that we have a nice award here.
We're happy we've invited him to be recognized tonight.
Sure. So I'll take the opportunity to say some words, and then I think we have an award maybe photo. It's my pleasure to have Dr. Woodard join us tonight. Dr. Woodard provided very steady leadership for this district over the past 8 years through some very, very difficult times. There was times when we couldn't get a bond passed, we subsequently got a bond passed. We couldn't get matching funds, we subsequently got matching funds. There's a high school here that's very much a credit to Dr. Woodard's stewardship. Beyond that, there were some very tough times financially. And Dr. Woodard proved to be very innovative. And you know, this district, it's known, collaborates with charter schools as to the extent that it's reasonable and appropriate. Whereas many districts show them the hand and are afraid of the competition or afraid of change, and we've embraced it. And it's been very good for us. Our continuation education program is through our charter schools. We have collaborations, our summer school program is through our charter schools. We hope to be able to team with charter school in the future to maybe bring career technical education. We've got we certainly have our nuts and bolts over at the high school, very much so in the context of academics and sports. But one of the areas where at least Mr. Distaso and I have expressed support, which is not to say the others haven't expressed support for it, is to try to get a vocational kind of track there for maybe students who, you know, an alternative to just AP education. And so I look forward to that kind of collaboration in the future. The staff that has served us so well, Ms. Lytle, our superintendents, our director of charters, were all brought in under Dr. Woodard's terms, under his leadership. So it's with great pleasure that I have the opportunity to thank him for those 8 years. They haven't been easy 8 years, but I think if you look back at where we were versus where we are, and you looked at everything from 50,000 feet, which is an airplane term, I work for an airplane manufacturer, you would say that some pretty remarkable transformation has happened. And at least for myself, I didn't want to let that go without some recognition of it. Notwithstanding any issues or troubles that happen along the way, those are invariable. But I didn't want to let go without some recognition of that. So I have a plaque here. I don't know if any of the other board members want to express anything before I have you come up and take it. Did I do? Mr. Distaso?
Dr. Woodard was in a very unique situation. He was hired here as a principal at Vasquez High School. And as many of you in the room remember, all of a sudden we had, for cause, an abrupt separation from our prior superintendent. And we were left quite rudderless at the time. I was the board president, and I was kind of feeling like I was the superintendent. We didn't have an assistant superintendent. There wasn't anybody to really go to. And Brent was there, having had assistant superintendent experience with other school districts in a well-rounded variety of different areas, from school construction to education programming. He understood budget, he understood construction, and he brought a level of innovation to us. And so we were lucky to have him to fill that gap when we most needed it. I joked with him a lot that the board put him through the world's longest assessment center, where we had him on the ropes for months evaluating his abilities. He stuck with it, trooped it out, no complaints. The high school, getting a high school in this community was elusive for years. And what we had at Brent was the great opportunity to build a high school for $13 million. Right, Jim? And that's what we could get out of the community. We were grateful that we could get that $13 million, but it was certainly less than what was really needed for matching funds. And by bringing his construction expertise was brought to bear in that circumstance. He brought in great consultants, and out of the ashes, we were able to rise a high school even with just the $13 million through a bunch of innovative methods. And because of Brent and because of folks like Jim, we were able to squeeze every dollar we could get out of the state when the matching funds did become available. And so, Brent can walk away saying that he was able to bring high school to the school district, which was elusive for over 20 years. He also shepherded us through the Great Recession. I thought that we had done a very good job as a board in 2005 when we brought the board out of the brink of collapse and receivership. And just about time we got through patting ourselves on the back, I don't even think we were done yet when the Great Recession hit. And we had a whole new series of issues that we had to address, and Brent was instrumental in helping us through that. We also asked Brent to bring all of his innovation to bear. He did so at what I believe was his own, against his own personal and professional interests, that he took a hit to his professional reputation by working outside the box and taking the board direction without complaint to develop a charter school model for us. And that charter school model has proven not only, well, it's been a 360-degree benefit to us, and the collaboration that we have with our charters and with the expanded programs that we have, such as summer school, that we couldn't have unless we had those charters. There was a lot of fruit to be born there, and Brent did it. He was a trooper. He sludged forward, again, at his own compromising of his own personal interest. And we continue to collaborate with him to bring a vocational track to our high school. Not everybody in school wants to go to college, and they need to be motivated to be able to do other things and have other opportunities. And that elusive vocational track is hopefully going to come, right, in December of 18.
If you approve it.
And so we're in the process of doing that. And so people can say anything they want about Dr. Woodard, good or bad or indifferent. The fact is when you're in an administrative position like this, the proof is always in the pudding. Where were we when we started, and where were we where we ended? And as Mike said, I don't think there's any doubt as to the degree that he brought us in the short time period that he brought it in. So thank you.
If you guys don't mind, I missed the point on my paper. Because people hear about the high school, and certainly that was a big milestone. But I think that we need to remind ourselves that the benefits have gone far beyond the high school. The Chromebooks your kids are using at the elementary school level, the STEAM program that was implemented last year, at the middle school level, the teachers on special assignment at both of those schools to provide enhanced learning to children that need certain kind of learning. All of that takes money, and that funding would not have been available with some of the innovation that the doctor brought to this district. So it really has benefited all of our students in all of our schools. And sometimes we forget about some of those things that aren't as tangible as the shiny new school. Of course, being able to paint a gymnasium and fix the ceiling at the middle school is tangible. But there's many, many soft things that I think our teachers see in the classroom. Certainly, I hope our parents see it in the technology and the additional STEAM programming. That you don't realize it because you don't drive by it on the freeway. So I just wanted to call your attention to some of those things as well. Gentlemen?
Hi, Brent. How you doing? I think everyone's said enough about the charters, the building of our high school finally, our comprehensive budget, our curriculum, and also what Dr. Woodard did with the staff, with our leadership, almost, if not all of the staff here currently that you see in this room, in our administration, all were hired by Dr. Woodard. So I won't get into redundant about elaboration of all that. They're all true, and my hat's certainly off to him for that. But what I think that Dr. Woodard really did here is that he changed the culture of our district, and he was able to foster an environment of accountability, and where our student body's safety, well-being, and education truly came first. And I know those are kind of words to a lot of people, but I think those were the guidelines under which scope Dr. Woodard did his job. And that's what came first for him. It was very apparent to me. And it was a pleasure working with him, and I hope that he sees our district and what he did here with the high school and with the elementary schools and with the middle school, what he did here with the students. I hope that he sees that as a part of his legacy, and I'm really proud of having worked with you. Thank you, Brent.
There, okay. I'm going to zero in on one specific area. I can describe it with 2 words, Brent. Public education. I got on this board because I wasn't satisfied with lots of stuff going on in this district, and that was first attempt 12 years ago, and got on it 10 years ago, and been on it ever since. And I was unhappy with some of the stuff that was happening at that time. You weren't here yet. And many years before that, living on $2 a day, my wife and I drew out to live on. We were attempting to pay for private education for our 2 kids. One of them now chair department in math in Saugus High School. And it was hard. And I was a firm believer that we needed the voucher system so that I wouldn't have to pay taxes and then still pay for the education of my 2 kids and bring them up in an environment that was best for them, because they were opposites. One destined for college, and the other one destined for another area that we've talked about in here, more vocational. And of course, that still has never come about, the voucher system, but it gave birth to charter schools, which was totally frowned upon. And it's totally frowned upon, I would say, 70 to 90% of people involved in public education. As you know, you made it possible for me for many years to go to CSBA. And I'm not always in there as one of the crowd. You made it possible for them to say, what's the enemy doing here almost? And of course, I'm talking charter schools. And the theory that I had was what is best for the kids and freedom of choice and for the parents. And before you came here, I don't think any place in California had that much of a tendency to back charter schools, even though the law had been passed to provide for it. public education and the powers that be were not gonna be behind it. And now, over these many years, things have changed. You've brought us through a lawsuit, unhappiness, and many people, I think, got the wrong idea about me when we had our first charter school because I voted against it, but not because I wasn't in favor of charter schools, but because I wasn't in favor of that one particular aspect of us getting involved with a neighbor. I called it the golden rule. Nothing to do with what was legal and what was right, just whether we should be doing to them what we not want done to us. As it turned out, it's been rewarding. We've seen many more issues come up in the charter school area, and now we're looking for a new superintendent, as everybody knows if you've been reading about it. And we have to get a superintendent in here that's like you have been for the 8 years in relation to charter schools, that will back us on that. And so that's the only area I want to get in, and thank you for all the years that we've put through. And the problems aren't behind us, but we're working through them. Thank you.
That leaves me. Brent, it's good to see you here. I'm glad we didn't have to Skype you in. These guys have covered all of this, and where's the cupcakes?
That was last night.
Yeah, you missed it.
Really?
Yeah.
This was all so I didn't get a cupcake.
It's all like one long meeting that we have to do a week.
Did you have any?
2 a week.
It
No,
sounded
I'm
like that was
done.
your
I'm way
get off the stage thing.
2 meetings.
So we have something for you, Dr. Woodard, if you'll come up. Why don't we come on, all down? With great respect and appreciation for what you've done.
Congratulations on your freedom.
Why don't you go to that side? It's a, I don't know what you call it. It's not quite an obelisk, but it's pretty and it's glass. And it says, with our appreciation, we hereby present Dr. Brent Woodard this award for your leadership of our district. Thank you, June 8th, 2017. And the school bell and the Acton AADUSD Unified School District logo is there.
That's amazing.
Thank you very, very, very much.
You know, I don't know, I've thought a lot about this, and obviously I'm humbled and honored, honestly, Joe. None of this would happen without, obviously, our great parents. And the greatest thing about what I'm gonna say tonight is that I don't have to patronize any of you, right? I'm not in that seat anymore. I can say exactly what comes from my heart, what I believe to be true, is this organization is honestly second to none. You don't know what you have here. You really don't. And I think many times you need to just take stock in what you have in this community. Don't take it for granted. Don't get caught up in the meddling and the fights and the nonsense that goes on here. The kids are what really make this engine go. Okay, I see kids here tonight, people that are very, very successful. I talk to different parents and their kids are very, very successful in this district. That doesn't get published enough. Your kids deserve more. Publication, acknowledgement. I wish they were up here with me tonight, because that's really why you're here. Don't get stuck in all the little infighting and all the nonsense. Guys, remember why you're here. And I can't tell you enough how much I thank each and every one of you and the areas that you helped. Each and every one of you played a part. Small part, medium part, large part. None of this would happen without the fantastic staff that's here, the teaching staff, the classified staff, the yeoman's work that they do, as well as the administrative staff. Amazing individuals, and all of you should be proud of the people that are here to serve this community. Lastly, and in no way least, it's unique for a superintendent to have the kind of relationship I had with this board. I'd be remiss to not mention Debbie Rocha and Matt Ridenour as well in that mix. Those two individuals, I can't say enough how I think many of my colleagues got it wrong. That you do need a board that aren't educators, if you will. Some board members are educators. But what I mean is they don't come from the profession of education. You need them to come from the community. I have learned more from these individuals than I ever thought possible about how to be a superintendent, how to be an educator. We need a board. We need the community's involvement. We cannot just extricate those individuals from the system. These folks are integral to our success. Each and every one of you played a role, and you know the role. We've all had extensive conversations, honestly. And I can't thank you enough for your support and for your willingness to share and be patient. Obviously, this is kind of messy at times. We all know that. It's pretty clear this can get messy. And so again, thank you so much for all that you've done. Thank you for your belief and support in me. And same thing for Matt and Debbie. And again, mostly, and in no way do I want to divide it out, but I can't thank Mark enough. Mark was a mentor to me. Mark was somebody that I spent, I can't even count how many hours on the phone. I wish I had a calculator.
I think I actually
He probably does. The billing. So the bill will show. But his experience in the public sector also, honestly, was invaluable to me, as was each and every one of their contributions. But for whatever reason, Mark and I connected on a level that was absolutely critical for my development as an administrator. So I can't thank you enough for your work. None of this would have happened without all of these gentlemen, and obviously Debbie and Matt as well. They played an integral role. So thank you again. Thank you to Lucy. You and I started this thing a long time ago. Thank you to Yolanda, obviously. You know, and that's what I'm talking about. The classified staff support each and every one of you. The parents, and obviously, yes, Lee, I love you. You know that. So thank you again. Thank you so much for each and every one of you. Thank you.
One more, guys. One more?
Oh, yeah, of course. One more.
Thank you. Sorry.
Can't leave.
Good. All right. Thanks.
Are you good, Lillian?
Yes.
Thank you, the boss.
Yes. That's extra, right?
And there,
And special
we're gonna resume, hopefully marching through the agenda that we just finished 8.4 recognition of Dr. Woodard. We move on to 8.5, new construction. Nothing to report under new construction, okay. 8.6, superintendent report.
I want to remind you that we have promotions and graduations coming up. We just received a VHS graduation invitation as well as a parking pass, and that is on June 14th at 7 o'clock. High Desert's promotion will be on June 20th at 6 o'clock in the evening, and Meadowlark will be holding their promotion 9 o'clock on the 21st. I also wanted to address a question that you had, Mr. Porter. You asked if Vasquez welcomed the recruiters for the military, and they did have a public service fair about 2 months ago, and there were 4 military branches present on campus for the children, as well as fire, forestry, county sheriff, city police department, and state assemblyman Tom Lack.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you doing that.
Board member comments. Mr. Pfalzgraf?
Briefly here, I went to the Herd event the other night. I'm not like a ballet person much, but it was awesome, and I think Mr. Porter will better describe it than I can.
Are you saying I'm a ballet person? I don't have other comments. Thanks a lot, Ken.
Ed, your perception skills are just something else.
No, you can't.
Okay. We had a great open house event at Meadowlark last night. The staff was there, it was packed. Everyone showed up at the same time, which further exacerbated the parking problem, but it was great. Office staff, everybody, the teachers, and on a personal note, I want to send out my thanks to Ms. Martin and Ms. Scheiding for making inclusion a meaningful word for one of my kids. So, you almost got to see me cry there, people. Next, I see in the newspaper all kinds of things about about kids being left on buses and special ed kids not having this and having to put alarms on buses and kids not getting to eat and all kinds of things. And when I see these things, I ask myself as a board member, do I ever hear about these things? And the answer is no. So when I'm giving a shout out to staff, what I want to say that is there's a lot of things that I think we take for granted. We drop our kids off to school and we don't hear the problem. So for example, if a kid comes to school and doesn't have a lunch, it automatically gets taken care of here and everybody's dignity is protected. So all the little things that everybody does in the staff that makes the kids just be safe and feel meaningful. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Distaso?
I have nothing to report other than to again extend my apologies to all of the schools for a variety of reasons. Starting early next week, I'm pretty scarce throughout the summer. And again, that's for a variety of reasons, but also to include the fact that for the first time in 3 years, I have both kids in the house. And having 2 young adults in the house, I think it's probably better to get them out of the house and go somewhere. So in any event, I'm calendar challenged for the next 2 to 3 months, and that means that I'm going to miss all the graduations, which is problematic for me personally because I pride myself in attending them, and this being my final year, I'm going to miss all the graduations in my final year. That seems not be a nice thing, but hence the apologies for my lack of presence.
Mr. Layton?
I don't have anything at the present time.
Mr. Porter?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be short in the interest of time. I wanted to make a report about last Friday's concert at Vasquez High School. I really wish all the board members had been there. They did our national anthem and also a few other songs from things like Hamilton and La La Land and especially Willy Wonka. They did some songs that were literally second to none. I mean, I wish everybody had been there. I would have paid to see it, and it was like a production from Hollywood High School. I mean, you would not believe it. It was off the scale. I happened to see a lot of plays and things like that, few a year in LA, so my standards are pretty high. And my hat's really off to Amy Cesari for putting that together. I mean, it was just incredible. Lee was there, she can attest to that. And so was Mr. Pfalzgraf. Thank you, Kim, for getting us front row seats. I appreciate that. And it was a hot ticket. And so that HERD can really use our support as a board. And I just want us to be able to extend them our assistance regarding any funds they need. Because like for La La Land, they had bought a lot of like steering wheels as a prop. And these are some things that you can maybe use in the future or not. But they want like better lights at the top where it can be controlled from the bottom, as opposed to like going out and hiring a company like SOS to come and set up in our gym. And the guys were very nice, and I noticed they put like tape around like their equipment and stuff like that, not to harm our floor, and they were super careful. I know these guys, they're the company called SOS. Instead of paying them, that was saving money. So a big part of like the fundraising they do is to pay the sound guys, to pay the lighting guys, because we don't have that, and they got to go up and up and all that. So the production was, like I said, literally second to none. I'm not exaggerating. If you guys had seen some of these songs and the way these kids, many of them I've known since kindergarten, or like 3 of my son's friends are in the HERD, and I've known these guys since preschool, and they've just like blossomed, throughout this. And another thing, they had alumni there, where they were there going up, and the improv was just incredible. And you guys would think it's Hollywood High School. I mean, I can't say enough. So thank you so much again, Kim, for having us attend and reminding us. And I really want to thank Amy Cesari, who was the teacher for this, and it was just off the scale. And thank you, Mr. Vose, for the gym. You were instrumental in that, along with, just to see that huge purple curtain and stuff, just something else. It would just, I had tears in my eyes a few times, and that doesn't happen to me often. So, and then secondly, real quickly, I wanted to, maybe Mr. Vos can help you along with this, on a whole different note. The Camp 4 tree, I helped design that, the landscaping in Vasquez. The Camp 4 tree by the gym is dying, and it's got like, 6 or 7 live leaves on it, but it's dying. That's the third one that we've had die, and the Camp 4 probably wasn't a good choice for there, in hindsight, because, well, I won't get into that, but that tree needs to be replaced, okay? The tree right next to the gym. So we need to work with our architect who was in charge of the purchasing of those. If for some reason the tree is gonna cost us money to replace it and they won't replace it, then I will donate the tree. I'll be happy to donate from my own nursery or find one for you guys from another nursery, and I will donate it. All right, so, and the last thing I wanted to say, this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the library, I have a free class sponsored by the High Desert Garden Club. I'm an arborist, so it will be about general tree care, but the main focus will be on the 20 different trees, which are pines, evergreens, and deciduous trees that are right for Acton and AADUSD. That will produce satisfaction and green, pride, as opposed to, frustration and disappointment. So 10 a.m., and that's just with limited care. 10 a.m. at the library this Saturday. Thank you, Mr. President.
Very briefly, all I'll say is that as the school year draws to a close, I'd like to thank our teachers first and foremost for another year of service to the community and our kids. It all happens in the classroom or it doesn't. And you guys are phenomenal people to make this a calling, really. And as a parent of 3 kids who've been educated here, very satisfactorily, by the way. I'd just like to thank the teachers. I'd like to thank the booster clubs and the parents who are out there helping, because the teachers need all that support. And a lot of people spend a lot of time helping. Thank you to the classified staff. Thank you to the cabinet. And lastly, as the year draws to a close, thank you to Ms. Lytle for stepping up in February, I think it was February, to take on a pretty challenging role during our transition period. So I thank you for your efforts there. I wish everybody a very happy and healthy, safe summer. All right, let's see. Moving on to business. On the consent agenda, we have a change. We're going to pull out 9.3, the minutes, and address it independently. We'll just take a minute because I think we have a change in the minutes. With the exception of 9.3, it's recommended the following consent agenda items be approved. So 9.1, 9.2, 9.4, and 9.5.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
Second.
Mr. Distaso. Any discussion? Call the question.
Aye.
Okay, now as it specifically pertains to 9.3, let's move that in. Do I have a move?
So moved.
Second.
Ed Porter, Mark Distaso, and discussion on 9.3, which is the minutes of the special board meeting that was held May 25th, 2017.
Yeah, I think I was the one that asked for the modification and change, and I can do a lot of things. But I can't be absent, as I'm shown, and second a motion while I'm absent.
So you're trying to say you were there?
No, I'm saying I wasn't there.
You weren't?
You were there.
We depend on board members to be here, Mr. Layton.
I think I stepped in just for that there. You stepped
Oh,
in.
my notes are at home.
I was wrong, yes.
Where's that?
He
Do you
did
know
not.
what the fix should be?
I gave her the
I will look it up.
information. I gave her the information. I'm
Oh, the
sorry.
clerk, the
The
person that we count on to get it right.
Exactly.
I guess my point
Oh,
here is
my
we know
Lord.
what the modification needs to be.
Yes, well, I don't, as of right now, I have to go look at it. I haven't.
Somebody else seconded it.
Can we approve the minutes as modified to remove Larry and put the appropriate seconder in place?
Aye.
Aye. Call the question, aye. Okay, so as they are amended. Thank you. your close eye. All right, let's see, now we've got some changes. We're gonna move to what used to be 12 it's still 12.1, we're just swapping the order. And we're going to, under business and financial, we're gonna hear from TDM Architects, our architects on the Acton School project. Do I have a
I'll move it.
motion?
I'll second it, Mr. President.
Okay, I was gonna read it. It's an architectural services agreement for phase 1 and phase 2 of an Acton School remodeling with TDM Architects. And who said they moved it?
You moved it, I second.
And Ed Porter second. Okay, Ms. Lytle?
As you know, we've hired TDM to work as our architect on this Acton campus. To begin this work, we authorized a $10,000 startup so that they could really begin to look at the scope of the work that was needed. And John and Ryan are here to explain the contracts ahead of you now, after they've done that and look at what we needed done. And I also want to introduce Jim Bose, who's with us as well as Will, and they can answer any questions about the scope of work and the contracts that are in front of you. John and Ryan, should you come up and explain a little bit about how you're working in phases and what we're doing?
Before you launch, I just, for the public, Mr. Bose was instrumental in helping us getting Vasquez High School open. And so we've asked him to help be a project manager on this project since its scope is growing somewhat. So thank you for helping us on this project. Jen?
Great, yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to help you with this situation where we simply have some remodeling projects that DSA wants more documentation for. In fact, they always want quite a bit of documentation. And we've met with the Division of the State Architect, and they wanted us to do one project for all of the remodeling work that's been done on this site. And we had a meeting with them, and we were negotiating to try to break it into phases, to try to take advantage of the fact that if we do it all as one project, then the first project can't be documented until the very last project is documented. So our goal is to break it into phases to take advantage of some of the guidelines that the Division of the State Architect has to make it move in a more orderly fashion. In particular, the Division of the State Architect has a lot of triggers that trigger one thing, one action triggers another. And anytime you do remodeling, it very often triggers an upgrade of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which includes everything from the parking all the way to the door of every classroom and inside the classroom. So in order to break it down and to be more manageable, we're working with DSA to try to have a first phase, and the DSA does not require you to do ADA upgrades when you just do an air conditioning project. And so our first goal is to get an air conditioning project out of the chute, which will be a matter of documenting what you've already done there, but there will be some additional engineering, and we're going to do some additional anchorage to anchor it to the roof better than it was. It was probably safe, but it's got to be super safe. And so in order to make it super safe, we're going to provide you additional calculations, additional documentation, and we're going to break that down into a first phase, which we hope that DSA will accept. Once you start submitting projects to DSA, you never really know how it's going to wind up, but that's our goal. And there are other projects that we'll be dealing with. You have an old manual fire alarm system here, which is working just fine, but they want everything to be an automatic system so that if there's smoke, the system goes off. And so we'll be dealing with that, and that's called the life safety project. So we're going to try to, that won't trigger ADA projects, and it can't be held up. They can't tie that to anything else. So my goal is to break it down into kind of bite-sized chunks like that they have to review. So that, again, the very first project, first work that we do is not held up by the very last, most complicated project. Because the other thing we've discovered here is that this is not just the remodeling projects, but there is some unfinished business from some old projects from the 1990s. There's some DSA projects, things that were properly submitted to DSA, but it's very common in all districts all up and down the state to have the same problem. Some inspector's report wasn't submitted, some other document wasn't submitted. We're going to help you pull all of those documents together for all outstanding projects I won't go over all the projects, but there were probably 3 of the buildings in this site here that need to be tidied up and get the documentation done. So
That was due to no fault of ours, that's.
it was no
DSA
fault of what you're done. Documents get lost. There actually literally was one inspector who's passed away. There's some things you can't help, and this is a very common issue.
And it's
Like I
22
said,
years ago,
any-
correct?
Absolutely, and this, I challenge anybody to find a district anywhere in the state that doesn't have similar issues. It's just very common.
Thank you.
And so, but we're under the magnifying glass of DSA, and we've got to follow their guidelines, get their paperwork right. And so how do we do it? We're trying to negotiate with them the best way to do it. So Ryan's been working on some of the scheduling for this and how we might do it and how we might follow ahead. So Ryan, why don't you talk a little bit about the scheduling for the project?
Sure. Thank you for having us here.
All right.
We have kind of, this is just a very preliminary schedule based on the
It's really our target. It's a target.
based on the information that we have currently. That information could change based on the more we receive from DSA, based on those projects that were done in the 1990s. Once they close them out, it is processed to dig that information up again, and we're in the process of doing that right now. So this schedule is really based on what the information we have right now. Depending on the work, I know there are certain milestones, I believe, that the board and Ms. Light will want to reach, and that's why we gave you those 2 separate schedules. Do you want me to go into those, or?
No, I think the overall plan at this point is to alert the community with your permission that we will not be opening in August, which was,
Yes,
on
that's.
neither of the scope could that happen.
Right.
Yes.
It's just a painstaking process. It's going to take time to sort through it with these other uncertified projects. And it will run through into 2018.
I would think the recommendation is once we get our plans approved by DSA, that we work with Mr. Rose and put together like a construction plan to bring back to you on what buildings we're gonna do, how much we estimate that might cost, so that we can start to move children as we see fit. But right now, I think we need to really communicate to the community, with your permission, starting Monday, that we probably won't be there in August. I see you not, she's one of the teachers that was gonna transfer here, and he's still waiting for boxes.
Ms. Lytle, I think it's important for the edification of the community to clarify to our parents and also our residents that basically we started this project to beautify a school and to fix up a lot of problems. We had to put a nice fence up to fix the infrastructure, aesthetics things, and as
That's
that
great.
happened, we felt that we were within the limits of what you can do without involving DSA. Basically, what you might think at home you can build without having to apply for a permit, okay? And it turns out that as DSA feels, that was not the case. Somebody turned us in, basically, okay? And it could have been anyone. It could have been a single contractor. It could have been anyone. But once DSA got involved, this is the reason that now it's being delayed, and they also found 3 things going back to 22 years ago. It has nothing to do with anyone sitting here, and we were unaware of. So that's what's happened. Otherwise, we were completely unscheduled to open had we been left alone by the DSA or not turned in.
That's a
Yes,
good way to put it.
that's correct. And like Ms. Lytle said, to get the work done that needs to be done for fully functioning classrooms, that's going to take longer than obviously September of this year, definitely into 2018, and that's kind of where we're at right now.
So, I think I heard you say it, but for everyone else, I think we'll know better the schedule after we approve the contract, assuming we approve the contract, and you guys can actually dig in,
Right.
get the plans into DSA, then we'll know. But it's clear it won't be August.
Correct.
Time for me.
If you got any questions.
I've said this before up here, this project, the scope of this project was known. It was known a year ago. It was known that there was gonna be a fence. It was known, it was all described out in the budget documents or whatever. And so, the important part about here is once these people come in, this is like the IRS, the equivalent of the IRS deciding what your tax base should be. And so, you're in a position where you're going to be compliant, and cussing them and talking about their belabored governmental process is gonna get you absolutely nowhere, and it might just upset your inspector, and then you guys gotta give them Valentine's cards and stuff to get things back on track. So, but I wanna point out, I don't see anybody up here that was, Larry, were you on the board in the 1990s?
No.
Okay, so he would have been my bet. So nobody was up here when these documents didn't get closed out or they lost them or anything like that. So when it comes to the blame game, it's not here. There are rumors going around the community that I turned everybody in, believe that or not. What I want you to know is that when I first got seated on this board as a clerk, my name goes on the final sign-off of a project. So Vasquez came in front of me. That job was signed off on, and how I signed off on it is I call people and I get evidence that the tickets from the inspectors are legitimate. So guess what? When this project was closed out, I would have called to do the exact same thing. So you could have blamed me then. But the bottom line is the project needs to be done, and it needs to be done right. Kind of what makes me think that everybody thought that this was okay, the pre-bid packages for the trades on the projects here say there's no permits required and inspections are done by staff. There's no a note of a DSA inspector, and I don't know that there's a DSA inspector on staff, so I think that everybody thought it was okay to move ahead. One thing I really want to point out is when we get into the LCAP discussion, you're going to find out that the budget doesn't rapidly fluctuate. Anybody that knows school budgets, they're not going to give you $3 million next year for a surprise or $1 million to redo the school. So I think that what was going on at this time when this was being done was there was revenue coming in from the charters, and that revenue is what fed this, and a lot of it, I think, was a special education oversight surpluses, and I won't get into all of that, and that is a budget source, but the timing was that the money was there, and it was time to do it. So, again, blame me if you need to, but what I would say is when someone comes up to you and says, hey, he turned us in, the question back to that individual would be, well, do you put kids in our town in uninspected, unpermitted school facilities? So much for that. At the end, I'll close by saying, if you go outside and look around here, does it look better to you? Markedly better. And I've never seen it look this way in so many years. So in the years I've lived here, in the 13 years I lived here, at some point I thought the building was going to fall apart and completely fall down. So regardless of the blame game or what went wrong, these gentlemen built our high school for us, and there was no problem there. So I'm sure we're going to get through this, and at the end I'm sure you're going to have a really nice project. We're just going to have to deal with some class crowding and traffic jam 405 over there at Meadowlark for another year, but it'll all be okay. That's me.
Do you have any questions for the board or comments?
Yeah, I have some comments, but one of the questions I have, and I don't expect you to say, oh, that'll take 7.8 weeks. I know that you're just gonna apply an approximate number, but in terms of these past unclosed, non-certified projects that are associated with Acton School, what is your best professional guess as to the amount of delay that's adding to an already complicated project?
Well, it's really hard to say because we requested documentation.
Just
from
your
the
best
state,
guess as to what you
but
think that's gonna be.
It very often takes more than a year. And we've had projects that, all to get everything done, everything resolved can take a couple of years. But we're gonna target the things that we can get done and push on those the hardest and do everything as quickly as we can do. But there are some things, sometimes it's a little bit of detective work. For instance, this inspector that passed away, you have to get a new inspector approved, they have to go and look at the work, you have to get.
From 22 years ago.
That sort of thing, yeah. Or, yeah.
So, for full disclosure, I spoke to both these gentlemen on Monday. And you know the position that I'm taking on it, and I believe that the full board takes, is rather than sit here and get into the weeds on how this is gonna get done, is you folks have been retained to create whatever strategy is necessary to be created to open the school as soon as it can be opened, and bring that before the school board. And don't worry about whether it's in the middle of the year, or if it's in a November, or if it's in March. You work a strategy, whatever that strategy is, to get the school open as soon as possible, which includes two things. One, the whole project does not need to be finished in order to move kids in. So part of the marching order would be to make the school, render it safe, render it occupiable, and get kids in that school. And then we'll worry about the rest of the stuff, working around those kids to finish the rest of the project.
Like VHS.
In many respects, yes. The second thing would be, and this is the time for this board to address this issue now, so that we do not pose any confusion to our consultants, especially since we'll have a new superintendent coming in at some point, is part of doing this is to cloud out those project pieces, so that what is required to be DSAable reviewed is DSAable, because we want to be in full compliance. The second thing, that for those items that do not have to be DSA reviewable, to move beyond that and don't include it in DSA approval. DSA, as a regulatory agency, will approve your shoe size if you let them. That's the nature of them. And we're retaining you gentlemen collectively to avoid doing that, and to work with DSA to structure the project in such a way that those things that must be will be, and those things that don't need to be won't be. Okay, so that we can get this school open. And so once again, on my apology tour tonight, I want to hit a reset button, because we talk about who turned us in, or it sounds like we were doing something nefarious. So I want to hit the reset button and start the record over on this. This project was started because we thought in good faith, in order to relieve the overcrowding at Meadowlark and to avoid fines from the state in excess of $100,000 a year, that we were going to do what we needed to do to render this school safe, usable, and have an aesthetic value to it that parents, kids, teachers would be happy with. Forget all the paid and play stuff. The fact is that this school had so many requirements for repair that it was destined for a DSA compliant, reviewable project at some point. It was becoming clear that that was going to happen, regardless of all the paid and play stuff. And it was clear that we were going to have to put the brakes on it in order to segregate, cloud it out, and figure out what was going to be reviewable and what wasn't. And so here we are. What's the end result of this? Kids are going to suffer from this. Teachers are going to suffer from this. Parents are going to suffer from this. Not only in terms of being able to occupy the school as soon as we want it, but money is going to be robbed from classrooms to pay for these extra regulatory costs. In order to have a DSA reviewable project, you've got to pay professional fees, and you have to pay fees to the state. This is what I mean about the extra costs associated with it. That's money taken from the classroom, money taken from the project. So, but our only other option was to do what this district has always had a tendency to do in the past, and that's skin corners, do stuff that we shouldn't do, build stuff that we shouldn't build, and then close stuff and not be able to use it even though we paid for it. We are never gonna go back, I hope, to doing that kind of a model again. That business model is over. So if there is a delay, as sad and as expensive as that will be, we have to do what we have to do to be compliant, even though to be compliant means jumping through hoops that I find often draconian at best. But it is what it is, so that's what we're gonna do. And Mr. President, what I would ask is, as we approach, and we'll be talking about budget in a minute, so I will be saying it again, but I'm taking the opportunity to say it now, is that we should be collectively as a board giving direction to staff to stop spending money. Put a freeze, and let's look at what our unaudited actuals turn out to be, and let's look at when we get our formal end of fund balances in August, so that we can ensure that as we're moving forward, that we are capable for paying for this project. I think we have the ability to do it, and we will do it, but we have to start taking budgetary strategies that will parallel the planning strategies associated with opening this campus as soon as possible. Does that sound legitimate and reasonable to the rest of the board?
One last thing.
Well, so I believe that, Mr. President, we should be directing staff to basically sequestering money, funds,
Are you seeking a motion?
until we can, we don't need a motion, we can just give a consensus direction. We're not making any decisions to spend anything. So, as we move forward, I want to make sure that the funds are available, and they will be if we do this right, to make sure that once we realize what the true scope of the project is going to be, and DSA hands down its edict, that we will have the funds to move it forward and get the school finished. And so again, on the apology tour, I'll apologize again tonight. We thought with certainty that this school was going to be open in August. It's obvious now that it won't be, but it is better to get it done right and late rather than wrong and on time. So that's what we're going to do, and we don't have any other choices in the matter as I see it. And I know you gentlemen have to prepare a schedule. That's what all architects and contractors do, is you prepare a planning schedule and you prepare a construction schedule, okay? I do not want to get into the situation that we got into the high school. We gave a date, and then we gave another date, and then we gave another date, and then we apologized and gave another date, okay? And that's how we lose credibility. So the pill to swallow here is the project is delayed, and until you have some 90-degree certainty as to when the school is going to open, I, for one, don't want to engage in speculation as to when it will. Mr. President.
So did we give a consensus to the way they would spend?
Sure. You're only spending on that which is budgeted.
Mr. President, I got one little last thing. Could you let me go?
Of course.
Guys, I want you to recognize that you delivered a high school, this team delivered a high school that has one bad cinnamomum camphora, that's the Latin name. And that's the extent of the problem. That's a tree at the high school right now, it seems to be. There have been some housekeeping issues brought up, they get addressed. But please don't allow yourself to be put in a position with your reputation knowing that you delivered a fully permitted and signed off on DSA project, for these DSA people to walk away and then come back 6 months later and go, it was you. Please force them to say, you're gonna open the door for the kids, okay? It's the only thing I ask. Thank you.
I don't think I have anything further to add that can be added. thank you for coming out. We look forward
Well,
to.
you didn't give Mr. Layton a chance.
Oh, I
No, I don't think I did.
Oh, I'm sorry. I normally start there.
Because I'm gonna open it up with a little chuckle.
You gotta bring a chair.
Please accept my apology.
That's okay. This is just my opinion. I agree with what everybody said about get us out of this mess, of course. But it wasn't as much of a mess as I thought it was gonna be when I got the phone call from Kim. She calls me up and she says, Mr. Layton, there's been a drive-by at the school. Oh my God, I'm thinking, oh, how many people are dead? Where are the guns? And then she elaborates a little bit. And I was thinking, thank goodness, well, not as bad news, but
DSA drive.
it was that's what she was referring to, but that's not what I usually think of when I hear drive-bys at schools. So we are still paying for the inheritance that we have gotten in reference to this school, which going back to when I got on this board 10 years ago, there were major problems and projects that some of you know about that we inherited through no fault of our own, starting at the high school, the gymnasium, that was operating good until it was found out the DSA didn't give us the stamp of approval, which we never did get. And that there were buildings that were being taught in that were not DSA approved. Well, we lived and got through all of that. But if you don't use something, you can't expect it to stay up in good, proper working order. And again, we inherited what I always believed and why I've been here for 10 years was an absolute terrible idea to shut this place down and with a few exceptions, just let it sit here. Things are going to get undone and have to be fixed. And when we finally came together to get the money and to reopen Acton School, which I was quoted 10 years ago when I tried to stop some of this from happening, when they said, I said, you're gutting this school like a dead fish. And it became the quote of the week in the AV press. Well, now we thought we were going along fine. Acton School was a school. All we had to do was make it nice, make it work, and we could start it back up again like it should have never been closed in the first place. And then we realized, and none of this, I don't think any one of us on this board, when we were going through budget meetings and finding money for this and money for that, none of us ever imagined that there was something so bad that we'd have to go to DSA. Well, we were wrong, we found out, and now, to me, and this is the most important point I want to make, in my opinion, the most important thing that we do now is get it made, whether it's a technicality or harassment by DSA. What's the most important, and the reason for DSA, is to make it safe for our kids. Now, if there's an air conditioner up on a building that doesn't meet DSA, more importantly than that, if that air conditioner that works falls during a minor earthquake or something and hits one of our kids on the head, we're going to be upset. So I can't be as offended at DSA making us do it right as maybe some other people. I just want the school to come into compliance, to be what we want it to be for the community, and make the beauty and the safety come together, and that's why we're depending on you to do that for us. And that's my view on it. I'm sorry we can't be opening up in August. I really would have liked it, but I'd rather open up a year from August safe than open up in August and have some major problem or problems occur during the next year that we look back and think, golly, maybe we should have done something just a little bit different.
So, Mr. Layton, the way I hear it is about the kids' safety, basically.
Yes.
That's the
Well,
top.
that's the whole
priority.
object of DSA, is safety in schools. I think it started back in the 1932 Long Beach earthquake or something.
Or just in any case, safety.
So I'm going to round up maybe a little bit, just for you folks. You know, if you replace an air conditioning unit, you don't necessarily need DSA. If you paint a wall or put down a piece of carpet, but at some point, there's a preponderance of work. And it's kind of a soft lever, and you trip over the other side of the work. And in the case of this school, there's like 10 years of deferred maintenance that we finally had the money to do. And so a little bit, by doing it all at once, you kind of tip off that lever. So, and that's just the way it is. So DSA is not the enemy. I look forward to working with them where they have jurisdiction to ensure that we get this job done appropriately. And it just, you know, we went over a kind of a knee in the curve with the amount of work that had accumulated to be done. I appreciate you guys getting down to it and, you know, satisfying the requirements that need to be satisfied, and we'll move forward. So any other questions? Can we call this one a question? All right, so it's recommended the board approve the architectural services agreement, phase 1 and 2 for the Acton School remodeling for TDM Architects, and a total of $216,000.
I think we need to add that fee contains a lot of contingencies in it. It doesn't mean we're gonna write a check for $216,000 to the architect and everybody go, what? The architect has prepared a scope of work, and he has built into this budget, this contract, any and all contingencies. The hope is that a lot of those contingencies won't need to be exercised, and so the fee will be less. But what we don't want to do as a board is to keep coming back and say, well, here's another $10. Well, here's another $15. We want to sell it with a contract and get it moving. So I just want to make sure it's understood that there's a lot of contingencies built into that.
All right, call to question.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for that trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Mr. Bose, for coming up and helping us with this project. Okay, now, we're jumping around some. Let's see, that was new, so we're on the new number 11. Well, I'm not very number. We're gonna move to what is 10.1, which is a resolution, it's under Educational Student Services, Resolution 16-17.16, a waiver for method charter schools. It's recommended the board approve resolution 16-17.16, a waiver for method charter school K through 8. Can anybody care to move it? Move. And Ed Porter seconded. Discussion slide?
If you remember, we held a hearing and Mark was here from Method K in 912 and asking us to submit a waiver on his behalf. He has one resource center in Arcadia, and so he wanted the state to kind of maybe give him that year, and we recommend doing this one and submitting this waiver.
Any discussion? It's already moved in. Any discussion?
Yeah, just so everybody knows, we've got a big crowd here tonight. We went through some of the remedies that this person would seek, and we discussed those, and that's the purpose of a waiver. It's not just to kick the can down the road and wait for a loophole. They're actively describing what their methods would be and what they're doing. So I think I was in support of that then. Thanks.
All right. Call the question?
Aye.
Okay, I'm gonna call that a 4-0-1 since Mr. Porter temporarily stepped out. Okay, item 10.2. It's the same thing except it's the 9 through 12 school.
I'll move it.
Thank you.
Second.
Would you like to say, Ms. Lible, it's the same thing except it's
It's
their...
the same thing, except for 9 through 12.
They have two charter schools.
Groundhog Day, I have the same comment.
Okay. Call the question?
Aye.
So it's a 4-0-1. Okay. 10.3, public hearing, iLead online charter school. It's recommended the board enter into a public hearing regarding iLead online charter school. I'm gonna open the hearing at 9:34.
As you know, ILEAD currently has 2 programs that we authorize. One is a hybrid with resource centers at AADUSD, which we've spoken openly about, and equally submitted a waiver, and they have plans to try to rectify that based on the Shasta ruling. They equally hold a charter school out in the Lancaster area with approval from Lancaster for pregnant teens and fathers to finish their education. They're bringing forward a new petition for us, and it is an online learning with no resource center, no seat-based, and completely virtual, so it's different than the others. And I introduced them and asked them to come up and kind of explain this petition to us, and we welcome them. We have Don Evenson and Aaron Jones, if you want to come on up and share your petition, answer your questions.
Good evening. I know you see me as a familiar face. I am Dawn Evenson, and I am co-executive director for ILEAD Schools Development. The newest charter that we are presenting to you, as Mrs. Lytle said, is a full online program. We have had this program in existence, but not as a school. We're an approved vendor through the state of California to offer online classes. They are all A through G approved. And we also have CTE classes that are approved for online. So this year we've had more and more people who have been inquiring about whether or not we have an online school. They like our system, they like the way that our program works, and we've not been able to enroll them as a full-time school, so we were hoping that we could present this petition to you for approval so that we can grant the needs of the community that's asking. This is Erin Jones, and she is the brainchild behind our ILEAD online program. So she's going to talk to you a little bit about the program, just give you a real quick overview, and then we'll open it up to questions.
Hi. I just give you a really quick overview in the interest of time. ILEAD Online works a little bit differently than most online programs in that we really, we work as a real support system for online learners. We emphasize with our facilitators that they emphasize communication and rapport with their learners and connection. We really emphasize connection and work to find the right facilitators that are real skilled with engagement and connection. I think that makes the biggest difference. In addition, they create their own content. We don't use canned curriculum so that the learners are not just simply testing and doing test-based online curriculum. It's project-based learning. So we really do continue the ILEAD philosophy of project-based learning, which is more authentic assessment for online. So instead of them being able to just do a multiple choice test online or Google the answers, we're actually challenging them much more when we do a project-based learning online, so that they have to actually demonstrate and do a showcase of learning what they've learned in our course. So like
we've just turned something up for base learning.
Google.
Sorry, my cereal.
Something like online learning.
I just wanted to demonstrate to you how it works.
Thank you.
That's how it would work. That's an example of how we would use it. Okay, so I want to wrap that up. So we do sort of, we do really emphasize a really strong support system. So we have, I'm sorry, it was funny. We have live tutoring that we offer. It's a really big part of our program. That's Monday through Friday, so the kids can hop on to our LMS system, that's our learning management system, our website where they take their classes. And they have a live tutor available to them in addition to their facilitators that are always available during via text, via live chat, and also via appointment in person if they need to. So we have all of these systems, a really strong support system, in addition to our onboarding system, onboarding process, where they go through an orientation with us, where they learn how to take the online class, not just the navigation and how to use the program, but they also learn an entire unit on netiquette and cyber skills, which I think is really important. And I think we'd could all agree on how to use social media and how to use the internet as a learning tool. Things like privacy issues and how to navigate using the internet as an educational tool, and the soft skills of how to like write professional email as opposed to what a lot of the kids use technology for now. So I'll try to wrap it up and maybe take any questions you might have.
I just want to add just real quick, one more thing. The reason that this program was born is because we have a small high school. And as you know, being able to schedule all the classes that kids need or desire is difficult the smaller the high school it is. So we created the online classes. And well, first of all, we tried an online program that we could purchase, and it was a canned curriculum. Meaning that it was just something they logged into, and completed, and then stepped away from. And our kids were having a very difficult time being successful with that because there wasn't the human interaction, and because our kids, when they get on the computer, they tend to kind of get distracted, and there's really not that power for learning that we want for our kids. So we decided to create our own brand of online learning, and we made sure that it had all of these wraparound services. As a mom, and not just an educator, I have 3 girls that have been through college. One is currently still at UCLA. All of them have had to take online classes at one point or another. And all of them, even though they were like straight A students in high school, they struggled with that. And it really was because then they were really on their own. And so when we designed these classes, we had that in mind. One thing is that we want our kids to be successful when they go to college, if that's the route that they choose. And in order to do that, we just felt that we had to give them a lot of scaffolding, a lot of text nagging, that's what our facilitators do, and a lot of interaction and connection. So I just kind of wanted to set the stage for that. Ready for questions?
Oh, so I have 2. So the first one, by the way, I have kids that have gone to the high school here, and I love it, but on occasion, to make their schedules work, they just take an online class. I'm ecstatic that it's there when they need it, but I can tell you the things that you said are true. They don't like them, and I don't think they, at least my children, don't learn as well. But that's my kids, and it's just because it is a little bit sterile. So now I'm curious, along these lines, how is it that you say that there's other than your selection of the personnel, because you said earlier, personnel that actually try to engage the kids online. How is it that you enhance, what was it that you said? You enhance like the user experience for them. So other than
User friendliness?
No, it was more
Project-based learning.
No, I'm gonna get to that second. How you do project-based learning online? I'm just curious. But the first one was other than additional or personnel that are maybe more engaging. How is it that your online program will create a more supportive environment, a less sterile environment?
Actually, I was working on I made a little bit, it's a homemade video, but I'm making a little video that's sort of my project that I'm working on this month. And I actually asked that question of my facilitators to share with me their connection stories. That was the question I asked, is the connection. And I got back these great little short testimonials and videos, which I'm not going to make you listen to right now. But
is it mostly driven by the people you have?
It's the connection. It's when you have a great connection with your teacher in the classroom, we're bringing that same experience online, and it can be done, and it really can be done there. Actually, I've been teaching online for about 7 years, which I think in internet years is like ×3. It's something that I was surprised at when I started to learn about how to adjust to teaching online. But you really do have some deep connections with the learners online that I didn't have in my classroom. This surprised me that I started to hear from some learners that I never did in the classroom. Some of them are more comfortable communicating through text or emails, but it's a little bit more text now. Maybe when I first started it was emails. That when I meet them in person, like we would meet occasionally in person, they wouldn't talk to me and connect with me as well as when they go home, and then I'd have 3 or 4 texts from them. So it's a little bit of a different way with maybe this generation or the digital natives, that they will feel comfortable this way. But it's a relationship that will develop over time, just writing back and forth, almost like, I want to say a pen pal relationship, but that's not quite right. But you do develop this. So the connection stories I started to get back was over the year, just sort of learning little tidbits about each other's lives and sharing back and forth, just the way you do in a classroom. You get to know each other.
So you're looking for, I think I heard what you said
Right.
was employees that really try to engage with the
We do.
students rather than more dryly just ask direct questions.
And that combined with the wraparound services
Right.
that you talked about, with the
Right.
onboarding, which is really important, the etiquette classes that are important, the virtual tutors that are available for them, and you also have a success coach or someone that's like responsible, for them, like an advisor, an academic coach.
I mean, I've just seen the dry version before, so I was wondering
Yes.
how you get the not dry version.
And it is through that, and it is a lot of training, you're right, it is really the onus is on the facilitator. It's the facilitator that sets the tone, a warmth, and we do a lot of training and find the right people, I think that's the answer.
And then, I'm just curious, an example, because I've also seen the point and click, and I
Yes,
know my kids
correct.
have gotten very good
Yeah,
at reading the material, retaining it for about 5 minutes, and pointing and clicking to get through the exam.
Right.
And actually, they go just as fast as they can, which doesn't always, it's not necessarily retained. I mean, it's just what it is. I mean, you all have kids that have done this by necessity. So how does project-based learning live online?
so just the same.
Just
way-
an idea of what that might look like.
Well, in many classes, it'll be a portfolio of work at the end of the semester. It'll show what you learned, like in an art class, for example, or it will be the portfolio of what you learned during that. Demonstrate all of these skills that you did during the semester.
Like actual
your
art
final
projects that
yeah,
they'll
exactly.
turn in, or-
That's an easy one. That's easily project-based learning. Or it could be like in a history course, where if you were going to do a presentation in the classroom, we're just gonna bring that online, or it could be a video, it could be a multimedia webpage that the kids develop, and when you do this on the LMS that we use, they can create their own webpage, and then they're shared with the whole class, and then they all are able to, instead of sitting through presentations, they're all able to view each other's and evaluate, and then it becomes a discussion and a critique, where they're all able to kind of view each other's webpages. They can be videos, images, it's a multimedia project.
As opposed to the clicking, the
Exactly.
multi-choice answer.
Exactly.
And
So
then
that's
going
what I mean.
backwards when you get it wrong and then going forwards again.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Those are my questions. I was just curious
Sure.
what that looks like. Anyone else?
Couple of comments. First, again with the crowd here, I want to commend you guys. When the Shasta ruling came in, immediately when you saw it could happen, you took steps to seek a remedy through your waiver, up to and including walking in the door of LAUSD with our interim superintendent and saying, we're here, we have a school over here. We've got kids that choose to go there, no one's holding them there, and trying to work something out with them. I don't want to belabor that, but I commend you for doing that. I think that in some of the experiences I have with charters, kids take offense to having their school taken away. They don't care about the politics. They don't want to sit at some LACO hearing and be a human guilt shield. But that aside, I think that is some of the students that are looking to continue their career path with you, their educational path with you, is this an option for them to do that? Good. Okay. The reason we have these hearings, in my mind, is to establish the local level of support. My questions are going to be about that. If a kid that lived in Acton or Agua Dulce wanted to use this service, and knowing that you have a big building down here, I've been in it, we stopped in there the other day, and they needed some help, some personal help. Is there an option available where at one day a week or something like that, or whatever's appropriate, that one of the staff members there could actually give face-to-face for our local kids?
Absolutely.
That would make it very palatable to me.
Right.
I love the world, you can tell that by how I act, but the kids here that would use this, I would like to see that they're supported. I know that you have a facility here. Staff, I'm going to ask my question when they come back. Is legal said that I'm not going to be sued by half the world when we approve this, so I'll expect that statement. That's all I have. Thank you, guys.
Any other questions?
So this will be, this new school will be under the iLead umbrella, but it will be its own separate program that is funded separately by the state. And you intend to use the funds that you will receive from the state on this school to fully support and fund this virtual program versus using funds from your other schools and what have you. Is that correct?
Correct. I think what you're asking about right now is our governance structure. This school will have its own board, its own governance structure, and they can choose to purchase services, back office services, of which you saw when you went up to the Acton office.
Right.
To help run the school and do
But
purchasing and all of that.
But it'll be purchased through its own independent funding source from the
Yes.
state.
Yes.
Okay. And the question that I ask all new charter petitions that come forward, I'm looking at your enrollment projections. And what was the basis for establishing the progression of the enrollment from 17-18 to 21-22? What was the basis of your projection model?
You mean starting with 70 students and then
Correct,
increasing
moving to
from that?
222.
I think that we based it on the amount of requests that Erin has had for her program without any marketing. And so using that as a basis, and we already have our curriculum created and approved for 6 through 12. And then the following years, it involves us adding 4th and 5th grade, and then 3rd and 4th grade, and then 1st and 2nd grade.
All right, and the last thing I have is just a comment, barring any landmines or bombshells that staff would give when they produce their matrix for us, I just want to say that I fully, setting that aside, assuming that's okay, I fully intend to support you like I always have, and appreciate your efforts in providing children with a diversity of choice. That's it.
Any other comments?
I intend to support you. Thank you for being here. Have any questions?
I think that partnership that you were talking about earlier, and I don't want to belabor this because I say it every time that I come up here, the staff that you have here, they are true partners. It's not just a, hey, here's a fee, and then you do whatever you want. They're actively involved, they visit our schools, they ask questions, they want to know more, as does the board. So we appreciate that, and so Acton is our first choice for this petition because of the people that are here.
Okay, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to close the hearing at 9:51.
And it's Acton and AADUSD.
Unified.
Okay.
Coming from an Agua Dulce resident.
Let's see, I'm trying to keep track of what order we said we were going to do. I think now we're
You can go
up
back.
to 12.2, which is the public hearing for the local control and accountability plan. And I'm going to open the LCAP at 9:53.
And my computer just froze. Let's try
We have our LCAP connoisseur.
Yes.
Gotta be good at something, right?
He's our expert. I'm not, I can't get the technology with it. Ta-da! Okay, Lynn, take it away.
So thank you guys for letting me present this to you. As you know, the LCAP is a requirement under local control funding formula, which was a switch from revenue limits. So we can go ahead and go on to the next slide because it'll kind of give us a little snapshot of where we've been and where we're going. So the LCAP is a process, and it's a little small, but this is a summary sheet of what we used as our timeline. So we are where the red arrow is now, which is at the hearing for LCAP. And up on the top where there's a horizontal bar that's blue, it is truly a process, and we've been working on it in some form all the way since the beginning of the year. So I do want to thank all the site administrators, the Boosters Club, everybody that's been involved, the ELACs, parents who've given us feedback and have sat and listened about how we are doing with our objectives, with the different goals that we have. So we are at the point now where we are looking at the actual document that we're going to bring back to you in 2 weeks for adoption. So there are required sections. There's a slight revision to the template that's a required template provided by State Board, and the required sections are listed. I won't read them all to you. You guys can certainly read, but the things that I will point out is this plan summary. So there's a particular page that kind of summarizes what we're trying to accomplish, what our successes were, the areas that we still believe that we need to make some growth, and then what we want to accomplish with our goals. Third bullet is our annual update that we brought to you in March, and then following our presentation to you, we took it out to our booster clubs, PTAs, ELACs, cabinet. And so again, I really appreciate all the work that everyone's done to share with the community so we could get feedback on that. The other thing about the annual update is I do want to note that it was through the work that we had with the business office also to be able to determine what our expenditures were for the annual update and then going forward. So we had our stakeholder engagement, and then what you're mostly seeing at this point is the goals and actions that are moving forward. The second to last bullet is of some importance because we'll see it again as it weaves through the goals and actions that we have. The demonstration of increased or improved services for unduplicated pupils. So I want to call that out only because of the fact that we want to increase or improve services for all students, certainly. But we do receive some extra funding for students who are English learners, foster youth, or low income. And so as we go through the slides, you'll see some italicized goals and actions. And so those are the ones where those funds have been specifically noted to support the kids. So big picture on all of these next slides is that we really didn't make changes to the goals that we started with a couple years ago. What we're looking at and the feedback that we heard from you and from our stakeholders, as they're pretty happy with what we're doing, they just want us to continue to refine. In fact, that was a recurring theme, is just keep doing what you're doing. We really like the changes that we've made, especially in the last year. So again, you can read, but in the goal 1, that's the one where most of our actions are, and that's really related to learning. So core content areas and then a broad course of study, which means STEAM. So as I noted, anything that's italicized on this slide or going forward, those are things that are specifically related to supporting our kids that are English learners, foster youth, and low-income students. So you'll see, for example, on Action 1.1, we're looking at professional development, but also on 1.9, we're doing professional development. Some of what we're going to do next year is actually, and then actually even the 2 years going forward, is continue to really focus on the needs of those students that are meeting the unduplicated count. We're going to learn to be better instructors with everyone, but we're also going to focus on some strategies to close the achievement gap. Also, a lot of our funds that we're just go that for 1 second back is we're putting a significant amount of money, if you read through the really thick actual detailed document, towards supplemental curriculum and materials for all students. So again, those are the things that support the STEAM. So next one. Number 2 is looking at our English learners specifically. You'll see that all of those are the italicized. So we're doing things like implementing the master plan, providing some extra support to students. 2.4 and 2.5 are things that we added because what we want to look at is we want to review as a work group reclassification criteria for students who are also, for all students, because we're going to have a new assessment for English learners next year, but also we want to look at kids who are both English learners and students with disabilities, because we're seeing that some of our students are stuck, and so we need to look at the criteria for students who meet both those criteria. So we're going to put a work group together for that. Next. Goal.
May I?
Yeah.
Please.
Sure.
Can you go to this slide right here? You know, I see enrollment packages and pre-enrollment packages on especially in charter schools, where in the pre-enrollment package, it's not an enrollment package, it's not like a summer school where you disenroll students from the home district, so they can go to a 6-day-a-week class and then re-enroll back in the school district. But in those petitions or in those pre-enrollment packages, it's not an enrollment package, it's a questionnaire. And you see things like what language is spoken at home, have you ever had an IEP, services where you're signing a waiver to testify that you've never had IEP or special education needs. And I just want to point out that rather than trying, whether that's perceived, the excuse is, oh yeah, we're just trying to figure out what kind of help you need. Yeah, right. I just want to point out that our LCAP process not only grasps and supports English learners, but the LCAP requires that you present a plan. So nothing upsets me more than to see an application, especially if one were to occur in the hallway of our school, that looks at screening English learners or SPED students. And obviously we don't do that in our public schools, so thank you.
Right. Goal 3 is continuing to work on our attendance rates. So looking at chronic absenteeism, which, just a reminder, is it's the state's defines it as a student who misses 10% of days or more, so 18 days with a 180-day year. And truancy is unexcused absences. So we're continuing to work on that as a goal. Again, we're trying to look at the fact that some of our students have a harder time getting here. So we're putting some of our resources there, and we're looking to continue. This is really where some of our counseling services come in. So we're going to continue that. Goal 4 is looking at involving our parents. So we have different opportunities. And again, when we say parent trainings, that can take many different forms. That can be a parent night, it can be meeting with counselors about what high school graduation rates are. And then we have some that are going to be targeted specifically for our English learners, helping them know about our programs and what we do to support the kids. Goal 5 is looking specifically at the high school and what we're going to do to continue to increase the climate and make sure that all students are graduating. We do things like paying for advanced placement exam costs for students who can't afford it. Goal 6 is related to assignment of teachers. So that's basically covering the basic operations of our cabinet staff here at the district office, acknowledging that we do have to pay their salaries and the work they do. And goal 7 is looking specifically at making sure that our campuses are safe, secure, drug-free, meeting the Williams requirements. So we're making sure that, one sec. One of the things that we have on there, if it's approved, is that we do have 7.4. The thought was to continue to increase our support services for students through counselors, and then also 7.3, looking at, with your approval, the possibility of buying textbooks that we'll bring back to you later on.
Can you go back, please?
And there are
I know I have
handouts.
all that.
I have copies of handouts.
I know, I just
Okay.
wanted to think.
Okay. Okay.
Can
And
you
then
go back one?
Yeah.
I'm just curious,
Mhm.
not that I would love to do 7.4, but is 7.4, we're about to have a budget discussion in about probably 10 minutes. Is that FTE included in the budget?
We talked about that, I think at the pre-study or at the study meeting, and we said that we ultimately wanted to get more counseling for Meadowlark School. And what you heard Lynn say was if it's approved. But what we also talked about was that we had 2 teacher on special assignments resign from Meadowlark. And so we would recommend that not backfilling 2 teacher on special assignments at Meadowlark and doing 1 with a counselor. But
So-
that's all pending.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is, no, the budget hasn't been increased. However,
Correct.
you may choose to recommend to us a reallocation of existing staffing such that you could achieve this.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, unfortunately, the way that the state requires for us to do the LCAP and then the budget, we're making an assumption. So all of this is with approval.
I understand, but that's an actual belly button, so I was just trying to figure out where the belly button is.
Correct.
Thank you.
So what's next? What comes next is moving over to June 22nd, adoption of the LCAP and then the budget. Pending adoption, it would be submitted to LACO. And again, if adopted, and then by August 15th, we would expect that LACO would seek any clarifications they may want to ask us about, and then by October 8th, we'll get a letter. Last year, we got the letter closer to the end of August, but that's the timeline defined by law as the drop dead date for when things come up. Yes?
So if we need to adopt this on the 22nd, because can you submit something that says if approved, or on the 22nd you would say, and here's what I'd like to do with PROSA versus this? I mean, I'm just curious how the timing works.
I can switch this again. This is a budget hearing, it's a draft, so any feedback we get, I can switch
I was just
it.
wondering, so we're gonna submit a budget, that's fine. You said this would be budget neutral if you do it, that's fine. So far I like it, because you guys are prioritizing what you think is the most efficient use of the budget that we're about to hear. That's all good. All I'm working through is that you said if the board approves this, let's say realignment, not a second TOSA, take that money and do this with it. Do we have to agree to that on the 22nd, or are we doing it implicitly when we accept the LCAP plan on the 22nd? I have no problem with the recommendation, I'm just wondering how mechanically it happens.
Did you put an additional FTE?
I did, in the LCAP, everything that's there it's actually built in there. So, that said, if,
I'm just worried about, curious.
no,
about
I
the
understand what
mechanics.
you're saying. So basically what it is like anything in the budget, even before LCAP, in theory, you're saying, yes, this is what our plan is, because a budget is just a plan. It's, it's a spending plan, it's a vehicle
So
to
we
carry
can
forward what you want to do.
submit this as it is, and that be our plan, and then if for some reason you came forward and said, I would like to do this, and for some reason we said, no, you can't,
Correct,
then.
correct.
But given the fact that we probably don't want to add an FTE, and we were just said, don't spend more money, can you, before the 22nd, take the FTE spending out?
I can do two things. I can take it out before the 22nd, or if you say, well, we think we might, but we may not, because when you go back to the annual update, for example, there are things we did not do last year that we had thought we would do.
Oh,
And so
Then you just rectify
there's
it.
actual,
All
if
right,
you look
I
through
got
the
it.
annual section, there's a
I
section
got
that says
I
projected,
got
and then there's
So if for some reason we
estimated
didn't
actuals.
do it.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. You
I
could
have
say
no
the district
conceptual problem with
determined.
doing it, I was just learning how it is, all these documents get submitted and.
Yeah, it's a plan, and just like you would have the 45-day
Thank you.
revise, when it comes to the end of the year, you'll just say, you know what, the district determined that it was not feasible to do whatever, or we determined a better allocation of funds.
Isn't this driven by, this whole process is driven by a dashboard in which you get green, yellow, and red lights? And if something pops up in the yellow zone and you don't address it by presenting a solution, then it throws up a flag with LACO's review, is my understanding. So it doesn't mean that LACO's gonna come here and micromanage the number of staff hours that are at a school, but it shows that you're cognizant of the need and that you're building some capacity, and or at least considering it to make it better, but you're still gonna be measurable in that area.
It's driven by two things, dashboard, and it's the orange and the red, where you're required to write what you're gonna do, and it can be a cost, it can cost nothing, you just have to have a plan, what are you going to do? And that's where, like, if you have your plan and you put your achievable objectives, if you can do those with no funding, by being more efficient or doing something, you can do that. Orange and red must be written too. Anything beyond that, you need to maintain, or whatever you set your goals
So
to
the
be.
LCAP takes some of the constraints away, especially when you see flags up over English learners and special ed and other Title I people not meeting their goals.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you,
want them
Zach.
to continue to grow, but how you choose to have them grow is up to you.
That's partially the whole point
Correct.
of this structure.
Yeah, if you can do it, if you can achieve things by being more efficient or narrowing a focus or doing professional development, and that's what we're really trying to accomplish at this point. Before throwing a ton of money, we're trying to be more efficient and enhancing what we're doing with our training and how we're using our materials.
CSBA. I went to the class.
No, thanks.
Yeah. So, You've been asking questions. Do you have any other questions that I can answer? I hope they're questions I can answer.
Do you see them giving you $3 million suddenly out of nowhere?
Do I see them? No.
Perfect, thank you.
No, because we're 97% of the way funded, so.
So, thank you. And
You're
when we
welcome.
talk about the professionalism of the staff that we have here, things like this exemplify it. Thank you very much.
I really want to commend you, Ms. David, for, your expertise in this area and delving into it fully. It's very nice to have you here.
Okay, so the hearing is closed. I forgot that when Ms. David sat down, that was my cue. At 10:08. So now, at 10:09, we will open the hearing for our adopted budget for school year 2017 and 2018. This is item 12.3 on the agenda. It's recommended the board enter into a public hearing regarding the adopted budget for school year 2017 and 2018. Ms. Lytle?
Yes, unfortunately, Dr. Budraja could not be here tonight to present this, so I'm gonna do my best. This is a PowerPoint that he's provided to us, and I brought it up on the web, or on my computer, and we can talk about it. Okay, so the first thing that he wants us to know is his enrollment trend, and this is a small sentence. If you look at 17-18, he's projecting a loss of about 19 students for next year. Going into the budget assumptions and revenues, he's listed the things that he's put into this as far as the revenues that we're going to be receiving. LCFF, we just talked about, he went to the governor's May revise. He's paid down our JCI and put some money into deferred maintenance. Federal revenues, he's projecting to be slightly less. Other state revenues, he's showing that we're losing some of our mandated costs based on the May revise. And other local control or other local revenues include a loss of one-time sped monies based on an MOU, which we've discussed. We have community collaborative that's no longer going to use us as their SELPA, and they're going to be going to a different organization. So we budgeted in the loss of that MOU. Equally, he's projecting the decrease of our oversight fees when you talk about our charter MOUs. We have 1% for the oversight, and we're now going to go down to the 2% additional, which would take it from a 3.5 as we've had to a 3. So that was a reported loss of about $380,000 that he showed us. Moving on to total revenues, he has the pie chart showing our local control at 64%, federal revenue at 5.8%, other state revenue 2.3%, and then equally our other local revenue at 27.9%. If we look at the next slide, he has projected our total revenues in a 2-year comparison. See the bottom figures of that is showing that next year we project to have a little bit less money. And then he goes into the budget assumptions and expenditures. We have the classified salary assumptions for current staffing levels, and that's where we were just saying we're not recommending that Lynn actually put in additional staff, and that's what we just talked about. We keep it flat. He does talk about the step and column, and I just want to point out that's not a raise that everyone's been given. When you budget for movement on salary schedules and people stay for another year or go into longevity or move down the steps, it's generally a 2% increase every year. So that's not a raise, that's strictly step and column that he's talking about. Equally, he put in the benefits for employees. The increase in PERS and STIRS were calculated in books and supplies, as well as our language arts textbook. And we have the adoption committee that's been working all year to kind of put together a plan on that adoption, and that's been built into the budget for next year. He lists the COPs and the JCIs, the normal oversight spending that we have, and then the outgo is projected to be lost due to sped money. He goes into a total expenditure 2-year comparison, and again, you can see the bottom line. There's about $1 million difference there. And the next slide, I'm not moving the slides here, I'm sorry, audience, please hold. Okay. So we are on budget summary, 2-year comparison, where he does an overview of this year's revenues, this year's expenditures compared to next, deficit spending, and the reserve percentage. So this year we'll be ending, according to this, with 11.8% reserve, and next year we should end at about a 7.7. Moving on. With the multi-year projections, as you know, we are required to go out, we are required to go out 3 years, so he's adding the 18, 19, 19, 20 expenditures.
I'm very sorry, I apologize first. Do you mind going back to budget summary 2-year comparison?
Yes.
And again, for public education, and me too a little bit. I have an idea, but can we just come up with an explanation of why our revenue dropped from 16,259 to 14,1, over 2 million? What would be the overall explanation for that? I know it has to do with the charters. It has to do with our reduction of our charter fees.
Charter fees, which is a little under 400,000. The pullout on sped services, which is a little over 600,000, and an anticipated loss of student population associated with our charters that are based out of AADUSD. That we're going to lose approximately half of that population. So if you add up, if you add up the value of each of those reductions, it comes out to
Almost 2 million.
almost $2 million.
Thank you very much.
And that's the 3-point basis for the reduction in income.
Thank you, Ms. Slater.
But I think it's also important to note that we're folding that reduction into 17-18 as it applies to the loss of charter students, but we've actually asked for a waiver. So they're actually going to be in place next year. But it would appear to me that we're actually including the revenue loss in 17-18.
What's the reason for that?
I don't
Steve,
know,
please.
because I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to bake the baseline in now.
Soften the blow.
Because of the, and it's, what it's causing is it's causing a reduction in, it's causing an artificial reduction in our reserves, is what it's doing, okay? It's not, and it's, let me say this another way. If we were counting on that money for this year, I would think that we wouldn't be taking the revenue out this year, because that would be a reduction in services artificially when the funding was still there. But by pulling it out in 17-18, it's reducing the reserves, okay? But it's not reducing services, because our expenditures are going to remain the same, okay? And so that's part of the, so he's baking it into the budget cake now, but when we were having budget study in April, we were talking about having to reverse that, coming up with a fiscal plan that reverses that, so that we can drive the reserves up again. But even after that, the 5-year projection period, even though we fell below 3%, we were still in positive territory. So I think it's just a way of reflecting. It would be a question for him if he were here. And again, for full disclosure, I spoke to Steve late this afternoon to get some clarification on some things, because I understand that this was handed to Kim so quickly that I was just gonna go to the source. And so it's probably a question that I should have asked, but I didn't.
Do you mind if you get a chance to talk to him?
But what I'm seeing here is, it's being pulled out now, even though there's a full anticipation that the waiver is gonna be approved. And that's a question for Kim or Amanda, if they have any updates on where we are with that waivers. You probably have no idea.
Theirs hasn't been seen yet.
But let's say that the waiver was approved, and there was an immediate reduction of those students. It's already baked into the budget. But not foreseeing any reason why the state wouldn't otherwise approve the waiver. It's actually a loss of funds that will occur, defer to 18-19.
If you talk to him again, please ask him, because I'm not gonna be calling him.
Well, that's the way I see it. If I were doing the budget,
Yeah.
that's how I would be baking it in. So that we were actually realizing the loss of the funds now, even though the funds are theoretically there. And I think it's perfectly appropriate to do it because we're not asking to reduce services by reduction of the fund. It's simply gonna reflect in a reduction in our reserve.
I think it's an important point.
But, you know, we still have the 22nd, where we're gonna have the budget actually formally approved. This is just a hearing. So, you know, between now and then, you know, we can get an answer to that question and resolve it. But that's the way I see it. And if staff sees it any different, you know, please say so.
I believe that's how he represented it at budget study.
That's kind of how I remember it.
Yeah, it is, so, but, you know, he's not here to confirm it, so we'll have it confirmed before the 22nd.
I hope it feels better.
In a nutshell, in the event that the waivers don't happen, we don't get the waivers, we wanted to prepare us for what it might be. In the event the waivers happen, that reduction is the following year, and the reserves this year will look a little bit better than they do, and so hopefully they really won't drop as much as you. And meanwhile, we're keeping our service levels the same, because we don't want to knee jerk and remove services.
I think it's also important to note, not that anybody follows this, but for purposes of the board, we're showing a reserve budget of 11% at 16-17, as it appears in the slide, in the PowerPoint presentation tonight. If you recall, it was 17%.
That's true.
At end of 16-17. And I believe that's because we're incorporating the cost of the TDM contract into the budget to cover that cost. And that was not a contract that we were considering when we were doing budget study. Does staff have a different
I can't answer,
reflection
I
on
don't
that?
know, I had no.
I believe that's what the case is. And it's also important to note that even though we're reflecting the entire value of that contract into this,
We might not spend it all.
that's a contingency budget, as I stated during the TDM
Yeah, we might not
presentation.
spend it all.
So it could very well turn out
That our
that we
reserve was
don't spend all that money.
Yeah.
But as Ms. David was alluding to, budgets are planned. And so we have to bake it into the plan so that we can measure capacity. And in order to ensure that you have capacity, you have no choice but to knock out the entire value of the contract. Not that that contract will be spent all this year or spent at all. And by the way, it's actually over phase 1 and phase 2. And at the rate we're moving with the project, we may not spend a dollar of it. So I think it's just important that the board keep in perspective that we're baking it into the budget as if we're gonna spend all of that money in 17-18. And we either may not spend any of the money or all of that money at any time. And we certainly aren't gonna spend it all in 17-18. So because we have to create a plan, it looks a little bit more dire. So if there were anybody out there that says, oh, board, I remember, I'm a servant, and I remember it was 17% and now it's only 11.
That would be me.
That would be the reason, is because we're baking in those costs that we weren't considering before the project was DSA driven.
Any other?
And
No, I've got things to say, but I want to get through this whole presentation.
Okay. So I think I left off on the other funds, so we're showing Fund 14, I'm sorry, Fund 17 and Fund 25 projections for next school year. And then that's it. Our 5-year goals, if I can get to them. 5-year plan and future considerations. Questions or comments? I'm done.
you did a great job, thank you.
Ready? I think it's unfortunate that we don't have a staff member here that can answer the budget questions and that they have to, the board has to inform that, so I'm a little
He's sick.
Okay, I'm still a little disappointed with that. Next, as I asked Lynn, there's not much room on the LCAP funding for stuff, but I got some, as I was trying to inform myself when I first got on the board, I got some spreadsheets that I asked for about the charter oversight fees, facility fees, and other services, with SPED being an example on the charter revenue. And I was given a chart in March and another one in towards the end of May, and some of the numbers vary dramatically. And I'm starting to figure out what some of these may be. It would have been nice to have been informed of that before it came out in this venue, but that's okay. The one thing that I need to get out on the table is I think there's a little bit of volatility, in fact, quite a bit of volatility in the charter world that's not being represented in this budget. In the facility oversight fees, or the facility fees, my first chart showed me that there was 384,000, and now there's 190,000, so there's been a 50% drop in the facility fee revenue from the charters. Now, some of that's explainable. The board decided that, well, let me say it this way. How many of you think that Acton School and AADUSD School are the same? They're in the same condition, considering they were built about the same time. So that school needs some upgrades, and it's been widely recognized by the board that there's some plumbing issues and there's some stuff there. And I talked a little bit last time about the renter there. I'm sorry, Maggie. Maggie Ford is here. She's from, she's the CEO of Einstein. So thank you for coming. But I talked last time about how the campus looks good, the rooms look good, they're clean. There's evidence that there's new books, there's things like that. So I think we were talking openly about dumping $100,000 of what we would normally charge them back into the school, because there's no reason of having someone struggle, and I'll get to that in a minute, especially with the AEA, the struggles they're going through with some funding things that may be beyond their control, but there's still $100,000 missing here. And I think that's related to the outflux of the kids that went from AADUSD back to STEAM at Pinecrest at the beginning of the year. So this is all based on percentage of enrollment. So that said, I think there's some volatility there. And again, Maggie, not to pick on you, but I want to.
Sorry, he was asking about something.
I want to talk a little bit about the plight that AEA is going through. Our 3 campuses that we sponsor are tied into the CMO, and I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that there's been a regional pressure against that, and I think that the budgetary, I want to be careful what I say here, but a lot of the future of that organization is based on that unit working together to pitch into a school that might not be doing well. I mean, if you open up a school and you're adding a grade every year, it doesn't take Einstein, no offense, to figure out that you're not gonna have the capacity of a K through 12 school when you're adding one grade a year and you're in year 4. So the CMO moves money around to keep everything viable, and it's pretty easy to walk away from some campuses where you just go, hey, doesn't fit our financial firm or model. But to her reality, the Hart District revoked the charter of the school my daughter goes to. She's been there for 4 years. Then what happened was they appealed, and I'm glad you guys appealed because that's the way it works. You appeal to LACO and you appeal to the state and you appeal to all those things. But at the same time, because of the financial unknowns there, they have to get a temporary restraining order before the lender will get them through the money they need until next January. If that doesn't happen, it kind of throws the whole thing into topsy-turvy. And so while our CFO is sending out notices to Einstein saying, at the AD campus, you're $400,000 upside down, but we're saying, hey, we need that $200,000, $300,000 or whatever in facility fees and oversight fees. I think there's some volatility in this charter market that is not to any fault of, especially AEA, but I can expect that through that plan or through the request for the plan. Because when we send out form letters, if you're not cutting it financially, it says kind of up to and kind of like a notice I might get at work, up to and including termination. We could revoke your charter. So I hope everybody recognizes that the volatility that's within the AEA organization is mostly in part due to the unknowns about the Hart outcome. Now, I would expect that as part of the plan that comes forward that's required, and we sent the notice out, that there may be some modifications to that program to offer services to make that campus more viable, because that's the expectation. And so therefore, I'm glad to see that it's on a future agenda item, so the community knows you may see something coming forward from AEA. And I'm particularly concerned that the Agua Dulce campus remains viable and continues to be that way for the kids over there. Next.
If I can just interrupt real quick, although this is just a hearing, I know that it's been talked about a lot to take that $100,000 that we get for them using the facility and putting it back into the campus. And if that's a decision that you want to make, we have a presentation that we can show you that Will's done some look at what it's going to take to kind of put some money back into that school. And we can get started this summer, but we need to kind of talk about that. So I want to throw that out there while you're talking about their campus.
Okay, we already, using the Betty Crocker term, we baked that into the budget already. I had some assumptions again on these spreadsheets that we could expect to lose $600,000 worth of SPED funds. Now, part of the charter business.
What do you mean, Ken? We could expect to lose $600,000?
In SPED oversight fees.
We don't expect to. We are anticipating that we are. It's been baked into the budget.
Okay, so that still doesn't give me $600,000 that our budget depends on. So my question is when you're involved in the charter business, you're dealing with private enterprise for the most part, unless it's a dependent charter. So when someone decides that they're going to seek those services somewhere else, and there's a SELPA involved, and are they not required to document that through you to say, we're pulling out of here, but here's our SELPA that we're going to,
Yes.
correct?
That's what they do.
Okay, I'm okay, Mark, but let staff work here.
Well, you don't need to lecture me.
Or me,
And
you either.
and frankly, you're talking about stuff here, that you're trying to educate us on how the SELPAs work. I'm not sure where you're going.
Well, I'm going to the fact that the budget there's portions of the budget that are likely to be reduced that aren't represented in the figures.
That's not true.
Okay, well, I'll finish and then you can do what you normally do.
Well, you bet I will. I will
Well,
do
thank
what I
you. I
normally
can't.
do, and that's be a good steward of this budget.
Okay,
And
so.
not just complain, but actually find solutions.
Okay, so back to where I was at. the charter or charters that are going to remove those services, do you have a plan from them where they are approved by another charter on file right now, or for a SELPA?
No, we've asked for a letter showing that they've been approved to another SELPA.
Okay, so, and the remedy to them not having special education, SELPA coverage in place would be what?
A remedy?
Yeah, what is the remedy for not putting that in place? Is it not charter revocation?
They would have to be able to
Yeah, no charter
support their
can
sped.
operate that.
Okay, but carry me forward here. So the charter, how many students are enrolled in that charter right now?
1,900.
And what's the value, budget value of that number in oversight fees?
337,000.
Okay, so I'm hoping that that charter comes forward with that, but given it, we're still out and had, if they don't renew and go somewhere else, I think there's another, whatever you said there, volatility in the budget. The last thing I've got to say is there seems to be a mix in some of our charter partners where I've got some that are wearing themselves out in court trying to present plans or whatever. And then I've got other charters where there's 3 ex-employees of this district setting up a competitive charter for the same online student base right over here in Keppel School District. And I think that some of our budget or some of our oversight.
I didn't understand that again, I'm sorry.
I said, to make this clear, this charter that I'm talking about that does not have the SPED in place, that has the 1,900 students, it's a big chunk of budget, is run by 3 ex-employees of the district or 2 ex-employees of the district who have opened up a competitive charter right over the hill here with another ex-employee of the district who is now the superintendent over there. So be it for the grace of God that we don't have a vulnerability here of, in addition to the 600, add on the 300 some, there's a potential another $900,000 worth of budget of volatility here that I don't see in these numbers.
Well, okay.
But I could die of a heart attack tomorrow too.
Well, okay.
And I might just do so.
I mean,
In the limit.
So I'm almost done, and then that'll be
It's
it. That'll be
important.
it.
You're communicating. I finally caught on. There are potential pressures to the budget that are not in there. We could approve a very pathological budget, assuming the sky falls. We could, but that would mean
A
that we
reduction in
would be
services.
cutting services today that are not warranted to be cut today. And so rather than build a budget against the worst possible outcome and impact kids with a probability of 1, because that's what would happen. You saw from that pie chart, 27% of our funding is other global funding. So rather than pass a budget that's pathological and kill kids, on the chance that, yes, it's volatile, that's why it's important to have these reserves, and you and I are in violent agreement on that. But I'm not going to bake in painful reductions because of what might conceivably happen that there's not evidence of happening.
I get all that. The
So
only-
that's
to
where
take
maybe
this
you and
to
I
the-
differ.
To the next step, and my final point is, what strikes me as most odd in these 3 ex-employees of the district, the one is, was hired to consult on our own budget to feed us numbers, and I take exception to that, and that'll be that then.
Okay. Ken, I am sorry, but I am tired of the conspiracy theories. I'm tired of the not so subtle any longer nefarious intent, implications, insinuations of nefarious intent on the part of everybody. Okay? And what I would like to hear from you is if you think there is so much volatility here that we need to cut 90% of our teachers, what is your alternative plan to fix it?
We're not back to the,
I asked you a question.
oh, I'm gonna answer it.
I'm waiting.
Where is it in these spreadsheets?
What? What is what?
Where is the numbers? Why do these numbers radically vary in the spreadsheets 2 months apart?
Okay, there's a couple problems.
Okay, go ahead.
This is what you should be looking at. This is the budget study session spreadsheet that we were given. This is what we spent hours dealing with back in April. Part of the problem with what you want, Ken, and we've been trying to address this with you since you came on the board, you suggested you're not being responded to, but you're not wanting to see that it is difficult to say this is our income, our charter income, and this is our charter expenditures, because we don't budget, we don't construct a budget. The only person who we could truly look at and say that our charter income has a true expenditure is Amanda Fisher. Beyond that, there's a lot of just Kentucky windage about, well, we'll apportion so much to Kim's salary, or we'll apportion so much to Will's salary, or we'll apportion so much to Steve because Steve has to do their budget. It's all voodoo science. We don't have a budgetary structure that breaks it down so that you can see it the way you want to see it. So it becomes difficult to show numbers, and they can vary wildly depending on what button you push and allocate a certain cost to a certain employee. The fact is that we have a budget that is predicated on our best estimate moving forward as to what our income is going to be and what our expenditures are going to be. You opened up your comments by saying you're concerned that the volatility of the charter schools is not baked into this budget, but that is not true. We are accounting for almost $2 million of revenue loss, which won't actually be a true loss this year, as we had previously discussed, but we're baking it into the budget anyway. Also, to suggest that the charter income volatility isn't factored into our budget is a false premise. Part of our 5-year plan was to take a statutory 3% reserve and bump it to a 10% reserve, and we did that a full year before you came on the board. The reason we wanted to maintain a 10% reserve is so that we could retain actual cash dollars.
To feed projects, I get that.
Not to feed not to feed projects. It was baked into the budget to help deal with the volatility of charter income. There's nobody on this board, nobody, who believes that there's not some degree of volatility in charter income. Nobody is that stupid or naive to believe that that is not the case. It is one of the reasons why we put in a 10% reserve. That is not to feed projects. That is on top of the feeding of the projects, is to maintain a 10% reserve. It actually causes a reduction in our project expenditure in order to maintain a 10% reserve, so that when we find volatility, here's a perfect example. I just addressed it. By maintaining a 10% reserve, and it actually turns out that we, at the end of this year, if you remember budget study, we were going to have a 17% reserve. But because of the volatility of charters, and because of this unanticipated cost associated with Acton School, it actually drove down the number to 11.08% at the end of 16-17. This is exactly why we were retaining that reserve buffer, is to address the volatility. And as long as we maintain this fiscal model and collaboration with our charters, this volatility will always remain to some degree as the legal issues work their way out, as the Shasta decisions come and go.
As we take on other charters, I get all that.
Forget the other charters. You're finishing my sentences for me, and you're not finishing them accurately. The reason, as we go on, reason tells us that over time, the volatility, as the marketplace and as the state and other school districts and charters find their level, the volatility will start to reduce. But there will always be at some point, by the very nature of it, there will always be volatility. We may have charters that fail. We may have any number. We may have a charter that decides, I can go over here. There is all kinds of volatility. It is about the only thing I agree with you on. But we understand that there's volatility. And we have factored into our budget capacity to address the volatility. And if someone, be it you or anybody else on this row, or anybody out there, has a better idea of something that is more sustainable and less volatile, bring it forward. Please, bring it forward. But I have been doing this for 12 years, okay? I have been on this board when we have had 2 major fiscal crises. One of them was self-imposed because we had a staff that basically couldn't think their way out of a paper bag, okay? And thank God they're all gone. And we've replaced them with people who actually know what the hell they're doing. The second are things that are beyond our control, like a great recession, okay? And how did we weather the Great Recession? Because we built up a major reserve. And that's how we weather our way through, so that we could have some control of our budget, okay? And be able to weather these circumstances. And now with the charter model that we have, we are doing the same thing. We are not going out and spending every single dollar that we get. We understand that there's volatility associated with it. That's why we have a 10% reserve. And it is that reserve that is already being put to work. It's already being put to work. So as time goes on, it's the marching orders that we have always given staff is be critical of the charters that come to you, evaluate these charters, and make sure that we're not taking on liabilities, okay? And that's exactly what they've been doing. There are a measurable number of charters that we have either never seen, or sometimes we see them and we say no, as we recently did a few weeks ago, okay? So I believe that we are meeting our fiduciary responsibility by making sure that we're only taking on charters that have some level and degree of success, okay? And by making sure that we are parsing out the dollars in such a way that we are building capacity to maintain nimbleness in our budget. Forget the charters. Throw the charters out. Even if we were just fully LCFF, any responsible entity, Beverly Hills, Glendale, Acton Unified School District, you have to have nimbleness. As Ms. David said, a budget is nothing but a plan. It's just a plan. And you have to be nimble because money goes up and it goes down, okay? And LCFF funding is almost as volatile as the charter money. From one year to the next, you never know what the governor is gonna do. You know, you wait and you wait to get a dollar, and then they put it on and they take it off, and every week that the cabinet report comes out that I get, it's an online publication, the dollars are either way up or they're way down. I mean, it's like a Heckle and Jekyll kind of a thing. Okay, it's crazy. And when they do land on a dollar amount, they say, but then we're only going to fund you, we're not going to fund you the full amount. Oh, and by the way, you don't meet the demographic that you should meet, so we're going to take more money away from you. There is about as much volatility in LCFF funding as there is in anything else. So I'm going to conclude by saying this model takes a lot of work, and it takes a tremendous amount of evaluation and review by staff and by the board. Much more so than any other typical standard school district budget. But it produces results, and it has produced results for our schools. It has produced results in our ed programs, in our facilities. I don't think anybody can say that it has been a failure. We have seen marked improvement in the last 7 years in terms of where we've gone with our budget, and we're helping to prevent another slide if there's another Great Depression, and it's coming, because it is the state of California that couldn't save a dollar to save its rear end. Okay, it's spend, 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 except, oh, let's not give too much to the schools. Or if we do, we gotta spend it over here. So I just wanna make sure that everybody understands, and you as well, sir, that we're not stupid. We see the volatility, we're planning for the volatility, and I am waiting for the day that somebody comes forward and says, oh, you don't have to work that hard, I've got the solution right here. And the day somebody comes and puts that on the table, I'll pick it up before it gets laid down and say, yeah, let's go for it, because this is a tremendous amount of work. But it is proven success, and I'm tired of seeing the oh, it's, you know, there's nefarious means, or the budget numbers are missing. That's not what I see when I look at this budget. It's not what I see at all, and I have been doing it and dealing with budgets for 30 years, to include 12 years on this school board. I'm done, I yield.
So in conclusion, the last two things I'll say is, I would hope that the charter files their SELPA form, and I would hope that our predictions here we don't see the 3 ex-employees walk off with 1,900 students. That's what I want to see.
And I hope I don't have a heart attack tomorrow.
Well, okay.
As you, I hope you don't have one either.
Well, no, I'm good.
So I hope the same
Good,
thing.
that's
you
it.
do.
I'm
I
done.
hope the
Go
same
ahead.
thing you do, Ken.
Yes.
Okay, did you guys have any?
I just
Questions?
wanted, yeah, I had a question for Mr. Pfalzgraf real quick. I just want to understand what the issue is with the 3 ex-employees, which are Dr. Zepeda, this is my guess, tell me if I'm right, Dr. Woodard and Megan Freeman, correct?
Correct.
And do you see it as a conflict of interest, or do you see it as their Dr. Woodard's involvement in our budget as a consultant, or what's the part, because you've been very clear about everything else, I just want to see directly, what do you mean by their involvement?
To make it really, really clear, I understand that if your fees are 3.5% and someone else will give you 3%, and you're a charter school, or 2%, or even 1%, the charter school is not going to just hand money over, because it goes to their books, it goes to their things, it goes to the kind of issues that we have over at AADUSD. But when, as an employee, you sit there and you've got the assembly chair, education chair, asking you why you have 3%, you have your FICMAT report asking you why you have 3% or 3.5%, and the only time it comes down is when you leave here and become a consultant while you're, and this is provable, simultaneously representing the charter that I'm talking about that can roll out of here with 1,900 kids. That's what I have a problem with. So what else is it that you want to?
I think you voted for the MOU reduction from 3.5 to
Of course, it was
Thank
legal.
you.
It has been legal for years that
Okay,
way.
thank you.
Of course I would.
All right.
Larry, do you have any? Larry?
No, Mr. President, thank you.
I really don't have anything that I could possibly add to all that. So I'm gonna, is there?
Let's put on the record what we were informed of this afternoon, and that is the May revise, because there hasn't been any discussion about the May revise. Okay, the May revise,
Which is reflected herein.
it is reflected herein, is actually showing that we will start with $80,000 additional than what we had anticipated.
On April 27th. I'm sorry, just so.
Based on our budget study in April, that we will actually come in 80,000 higher with all of our revenues based on the May revise, based on our ADA, based on our student populations and everything else, that the May revise shows that we'll actually be starting 80,000 higher, which will help to offset some of those charter revenue losses. So that's actually good news as it relates to the budget. And I fully anticipate that our end of year unaudited actuals will add more funds to the budget and create greater capacity that is not reflected in these numbers here.
Anybody else have anything? Audience? I'm gonna close it at 10:52. All right, let's see, we're skipping all over the place. That was section 12. Now, bear with me, folks. Okay, so now, on your agenda is items 11.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And do we need to make a motion to pull them?
Yeah, I'm gonna move that we pull those tonight so that we can resolve some technical items associated with those, and then we can bring it back
I'll second that.
at the next meeting.
Okay, so.
And that's for each of them.
All of them.
11.1 through 5.
11.5.
Correct.
So Mark is moving, Ed is seconding that we hold them. Do we need to then call the question?
We should call the question on that.
Okay. Discussion. Call the question.
Aye.
Abstain. Okay, so that's a 4-0. That's a 4-0-0, because we have an abstention.
401.
Well,
Abstain.
Normally that's called an absent, yeah, but it should reflect an absent.
Right.
His abstention.
That's for each.
Abstain. Larry. Did you get that?
Yes.
Okay.
And put it on the next board meeting, not the one next week, but 22nd.
Correct.
All right. Now, having done all that, I'm just double checking our list. It sounds like we are up to 13 future agenda items in this slide.
Yes, we have a lot. I want to highlight, we will be asking for the LCAP adoption and budget, which we've already talked about. We will have a presentation for the ELA adoption. We'll have an annual charter report, as well as Mr. Pfalzgraf mentioned that AEA would be coming back with a material revision for their AD partnership.
Okay, so hearing.
Yes.
All right.
And given that that's a hearing, we might need to call for a summer recommendation by staff. So maybe if we could fit it into some of your summer board meetings that sound like they're gonna be planned.
We're gonna
We'd like
have them
to-
for other reasons for the.
Yeah, we'd like to be
for the
able to
superintendent.
give a recommendation before August.
I think there's a lot of things that are happening that are moving pieces and the like right now. And if we hear some ideas, we not only have compliance with the request that's been made about the budgetary plan, but also, I don't think there's a huge rush to throw something together in a week or whatever, and it's just kind of getting it on the map, and it's part of the bigger picture. And I'll go ahead and say it, I might be sanctioned for it, but, you know, it's really sad to me that AEA has been put through this, and then the district that denied their renewal is now, after saying, oh, we'll take you in, we're ready for you, and it was all this talk the whole time about, well, you're taking away our students, you're cherry picking our students, and now when it comes time, when people are actually looking for a placement, not only is the organization helping the ones that choose to want to go graciously, now they're finding out that the organization doesn't even have the capacity to service those students. So I'm really, really hoping we come up with a good solution for AADUSD.
Okay, in order for this to meet certain criteria, has staff given any guidance to AEA as to what this board would like to see? What I would hate, considering the time crunch on this, is that they come and they make a presentation and we ask 1,000 questions and we have to delay action on it. That doesn't help their timeline. So.
We worked directly with Maggie and we understand the changes that they want in the petition and we think we need to honor their hearing.
Are those?
Well, I don't have a problem with honoring the hearing. What I'm suggesting is what I'm asking is, will they be prepared to meet? I'll just speak for myself. will they be prepared to meet the questions that I'm gonna be asking about space, about allocation, about potential enrollment projections?
Parking, we talked about all of that.
You know,
Community
is what kind of cost, if any, are gonna be associated with it? You know, my heart tells me that this is something we should support, but the business side of me says, well, wait a minute, before we can do that, we need to make sure that they have these things in order, so that they're set up for success, so.
Is that on the 22nd, Mark?
Yes.
Are you
Yes.
gonna be here?
Maybe. On the 22nd, no, I won't be, but I would.
I'm wondering how you're gonna ask the question.
Well, I would hope that the board members would be asking the same
All of the
questions.
things that you talked about, we spoke directly with Maggie about.
I would be concerned also, as long as we're getting those questions out there, the potential impacts of the campus from older grade level usage, which is something we're trying to avoid.
Well, all of those things, the age appropriateness for the facility and how we look to achieve that and there's just a number of things that.
And involving the community about what also, you know.
Is that what we wanna do, put a high school on Ogwood
No,
Elementary?
that's not what we're discussing. We've asked them by default of statute to say, if there's a fiscal issue, that they're noticed and they come back with a plan. And I believe that some of the things that they would possibly consider doing are already part of their charter agreement, I would hope. And nobody's gonna come forward and ask for a brand new charter agreement. I think the things are in there.
Well, I don't think all the grade levels are in there as currently constituted.
Don't know that.
Well, we do know that.
But I don't, so I'm gonna say I don't know that. But at the end of the day, the first question I ask every charter that comes in here, and I'll remind you guys out there, do you have local support? Will residents come forward that live in our community, not go to school from online somewhere else? Will they come forward and support what you're proposing? I wanna see that campus do well, I really do. That's enough for me, sorry.
Okay. All right, so I think you got maybe an earful.
Mr. President, may I ask that we tell our interim superintendent that she works with Yolanda in putting some of these meetings together, since Yolanda is like dealing with Al directly, at the same time this summer as we're, you know, maybe before or after the meetings we have for this, because we have like a meeting every week this summer pretty much. And it's just getting.
So I think what we can do, because we have so many meetings already, and I'm about to have another one.
I know.
I think that there's opportunities to onboard this discussion, because unfortunately this summer we're not gonna be off as much as we have because of the superintendent selection. But I think there's plenty of opportunities to do that.
Yeah, just maybe at the same time as one of those.
Yeah,
meetings, before or after.
of course. I mean, you know the schedule, we've got meetings left and right.
And that was actually a question that we had talked earlier about the summer meetings that you're gonna need. When we bring back the adopted board meetings for next year, which we're doing on the 22nd, do you want us to schedule these as regular scheduled July through June meetings, since you have summer meetings planned?
Okay, now
Do you
I'm
wanna keep
confused.
them
For
separate?
next summer, I would certainly
This
hope-
coming summer.
This summer.
This summer coming up?
Sorry,
2
July
weeks.
1.
Oh,
Normal.
She's asking if you just wanna put them all in as
As
regularly scheduled meetings instead of having a slew of specials.
That's
Right.
fine.
Can we do that? Does that comply with our board policy and board rules?
Here's what
Well,
I'm
you can have a regular scheduled meeting if you post within 72 hours.
Yeah, well,
So
here's,
you can just expand your calendar.
here's the only reason, I mean, and this is not because we don't wanna tell you all the dates, you all heard the dates.
Last
Just,
night, last night.
just last night?
Yeah.
The issue is, if they're specials, you only have to post 24 hours in advance. If they're regularly, it's 3 days in advance. And as you heard last night, much of the materials that come in are gonna be coming in like just in time. And so just as a matter of the ability to do business on that very accelerated schedule, I would hate for us to call them regulars and then not be able to hire a superintendent because we couldn't get a particular piece of material up 3 days in advance versus one. So since you asked.
Then you turn it,
I mean, since you asked, my inclination therefore is to leave them as specials because I think we may need the flexibility. We were certainly open with the dates that we anticipate those things. And we will get everything posted certainly.
But
as
to
far
do
as
actual
we can.
hiring, we need a regular meeting, not a special.
That is true, so we're gonna need
Yeah, it's
at
at the
least
very
one,
end.
you're right.
So what I'm suggesting is that if you schedule them all as regular meetings,
Yeah, yeah.
and then
yeah.
you came up with emergencies, then you add the specials in between.
Yeah.
And to satisfy Larry's issue,
You're right.
the new fiscal year starts July 1.
Correct.
So if you were to do a calendar that went from July 1 to June 30th, and you incorporated the summers as regulars, we now have our annual schedule set in stone with far more than 72 hours of advance notice for all of that. And then if it doesn't fit our schedule, then you can cancel a regular and put in a special or however, but in order to hire folks, you need to do it on a regular
Exactly, so
meeting.
that's the wild card, and I'm glad that you're on the ball and caught me, because when we get through this whole process, we're gonna have to actually hire the superintendent and approve a contract, which must be done in a regularly scheduled meeting.
We've got that August 20.
Well, just in
Well,
case
last
we
night's
manage.
board meeting.
I understand, what if we get through it early? So I think all Ms. Lytle's suggesting is we made a schedule, let her memorialize it.
I think it's more transparent.
That's fine.
Yes.
I'm
You
okay.
post a schedule, you put it online,
Yeah.
everybody
You
sees,
can
oh
always-
my God, these nuts have a whole summer of meetings going on. What the heck?
Yeah,
But
that's fine.
Well, special meeting doesn't have to be only 24 hours notice, that's just the minimum. You could still give 72-hour
Yep.
notice, 48.
So go ahead and schedule them.
The thing
You
that I wanna make
Draft,
sure
we'll
does
talk
not,
about it on the 22nd.
Fine, thank you.
the thing that I wanna make sure does not happen here, is there's some pretense that we're rushing Maggie and her team to get something on the table, that she's got plenty of experience, I don't even want to get into, knows when to come forward with something that's viable. The people that are here tonight know what support is needed, and I don't want somebody saying, well, they just jammed something through here in a day. So, Maggie, I know that you'll come forward when it's time. I know there are time constraints, and I know that there are kids that go to your school from this town that are looking for a solution other than to walk away. Is that you, young man?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Poor guy.
I don't think anybody will have the impression that the district is pressuring them. There's a timeline for next year that's pressuring them.
Right.
It's God-driven, not board-driven.
Can I
So-
just add one more hearing that we might be having is another material revision from ALA, and that's to work on the WIOA programs and bring more students to our petition.
Right.
We're gonna be here.
So lucky us.
Their moment in the sun.
And just
Okay.
added on to one of the meetings that
So,
we already had.
It'll be on the 22nd.
Since this is imminent, on calendar June 22nd, sir, we're gonna need a special closed on June 15th. I'll just tell you folks, we have to discuss our interim superintendent search. So we're searching for a superintendent that will not close by July 1st. So we have a very short fuse to do something for July 1st when Mrs. Lytle's interim superintendent contract expires. And so by having that discussion on the 15th, then that means at the 22nd, which is a regularly scheduled meeting, on the 22nd, we can actually approve a contract for an interim superintendent while the search continues through the summer. So we don't go leaderless. So that's why,
June 15th?
yes, that's why we'll be here
Mr.
next week.
President,
Yes,
may I
sir.
tell you that in the 10 years I've been on the board, we have just set a record. I don't believe we have ever had 1 month in summer or out of summer where we had a board meeting every Thursday. And in this month, we even have 5 Thursdays.
Yes, well, it's a busy summer.
I think you should double my pay.
Oh,
What's
We
2
give you
times 0?
Okay,
cupcakes.
so can we move on to,
Guys, remember June 14th is the graduation.
all right, so, closed session, 15.0. Let's see, I'm looking for my notes, there is something to report out there. Lots of paper, lots of paper. Safely tucked away. Bear with me, folks. Yeah, I've got it, just give me a sec. What the heck? I probably tucked it away really, because it's a closed session item. Let's see what you got. Yeah. Do you remember our vote was 3-2? 3-2. By a vote of 3-2 in closed session, we voted to deny readmission to a previously expelled student due to concerns of safety of other students.
And we need to report out who said yes and no.
Oh, that's fine. Larry and I were the no's, so we voted
To let him back.
not to deny, which means we thought that we could have him come back safely, based on all the evidence in the case, but the majority voted that that wasn't the case. All right. So did we capture that?
We discussed other personnel matters, but there were no actions.
No actions, thank you. Okay, so we will adjourn at 11:10.
I'll move.
One second.
Moved by Mark Distaso, seconded by Ed Porter. Call the question.
Aye.
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 All right, thank you, everybody.